Hi, and welcome to Design Dekko Musings, Season 2 and Day 2. Yesterday, we had a lineup of great speakers and engaging conversations. Let me welcome all the people who are here, who have joined us on Zoom and as well as on social media. I'm Supreme. And before we move on to today's proceeding, let me just give you a short and brief introduction to what is Design Dekko and why do we do this. So Design Dekko is an initiative led by one of the most respected conglomerates from India, Godrej Group. The idea was to bring together the collective wisdom of thought leaders from the design space. The platform was made with the core motto of network, engage, and collaborate. We wanted to bring together design professionals, enthusiasts, students to come on board and raise the level of conversations which were happening in the industry. Design Dekko Musings, of which you are all part right now, was started last year. The whole idea was to bring a level of engaging conversations around design and the industry, bringing together stalwarts from India and the globe. This is an opportunity where students, enthusiasts, and young professionals will be able to engage, inquire, and even delve into the nuances of design and art. The theme of this season is Design for Thought. Now, I will leave Mrinalini and Sneha to do the more detailed introduction of the theme. But why did we start or select this theme? One reason was the recent study that we did, the Godrej Little Things We Do, in which we found that over 52% of Indians have now become conscious of environment, including growing plants, becoming more prudent of purchases, and even conserving energy as a direct result of the pandemic and the subsequent lockdown. Now, after this brief introduction on the theme, let me do the honor and invite my curators, Kunal and Sneha Ulal. Both of them very well-known professionals and adept at curating the events, and I'm pretty sure the line of speakers who have come on board, you will be enjoying the conversation that we have. But let me just introduce them, at least in a brief manner. Mrinalini is an architect by training, visualizer by heart, and a writer by profession. She worked in the architecture, lighting design, historical research, and has been writing for more than a decade on the industry. As an independent consultant, she continues her pedagogical interest and extends her passion for architecture, design, craft, and art by writing on the industry and through curatorial practices. Sneha Ulal, on the other end, is a trained creative writer and the curator of storytelling experiences. She's a brand and marketing communication specialist who enjoys working with design, luxury, retail, real estate, fintech, and social impact brands. She has previously worked with Jaipur Rugs, Godrej Properties, L Decor, and Exchange for Media, to name a few. From here on, let me hand over the baton to Mrinalini and Gedeo. Mrinalini, and Sneha, over to you.
Thank you so much, Supreet. We are very excited to be here this afternoon and very, very excited to have a stellar lineup of speakers with us. Before we begin our first panel, just a quick introduction to what is Design for Thought and why we're actually doing this. This was an opportunity that Godrej gave us, Sneha and me, to put our thoughts together. But where this entire conversation stems from is something that Sneha and I have been discussing over many months now. Like I mentioned yesterday, we've actually had interesting paths, very similar trajectories, and have intersected at certain points, but we never really had the opportunity to work together. And this was the most opportune time for us to come together to bring some of our own curiosities and our own questions and sort of formulate them in a manner that we could project them to the community. And we are talking about the larger creative community internationally, not just us. We realized through our conversations that it wasn't about me or her. It wasn't about our immediate sort of environment. But all these subjects that we've chosen to address over these two days, I think they're very relevant and they're very poignant for all of us. And everyone that we've spoken with and all the speakers that we brought this up with, they all felt they resonated with the ideas, and we're very grateful for all of them to have agreed to come on board and talk to us yesterday and today. But the idea here was basically to look a little inwards and to talk about some of the things that we face on a daily basis, but we don't necessarily converse about, and especially on open platforms. So the point being that we want to bring high achievers to this larger audience. We want to break the glass boxes that we very often put them in. We want them to be accessible, and we want them to be honest and candid about their own perspectives and their own journeys. We also want the audience to know that we all have our personal journeys. We all have our ups and downs. We all experience trials and tribulations, and we make mistakes. We have our failures. And that is what brings us to where we eventually end up, right? So that's the basic crux of why we are doing this and why this is called Design for Thought. We do hope to discuss thoughtful design, and we do hope that everybody walks away from here with something that they can be inspired by, or they can learn, or they can get the impetus to do something with. Sneha, I'd like you to add something to that.
No, absolutely, Nani. I think you hit the nail in the head with why we came together to do this. All I wanted to add here is that I'm so grateful. Both Nani and I are really grateful for all of our speakers, including today's speakers, who immediately just said yes to topics that would have been otherwise alien, or otherwise they could have easily prompted us and asked us why this topic of conversation. So it's great that all of them said yes right off the bat. They resonated with Design for Thought. They resonated with the topic of discussion. Just kind of recapping from yesterday to yesterday, we had Tapio and Ayaz talk about digital design and how there could be a blur of boundaries and where it is heading to next. Then we had Raghava KK, we had Rakesh Kumar, we had Sunita Kondur, and we had can you remind me of the fourth speaker? Sorry. Inato Seema, yes. Again, such a diverse panel talking about how technology interfaces with design and where are we going to next. So we had such diverse panelists, each with the common kind of overlap being design, talking about technology and how it is going to affect us. And I like the fact that with both conversations, the overlap didn't just end up being design, but also human interaction, which led us to the last panel of last evening on making the headline, or basically how do you build your brand? How organically can you do it? How authentically can you do it? And how do you bring your persona, let your work speak for itself? So we had Vinita Chaitanya, who's an awesome interior designer. We had Parina Thapar, who heads Longform and handles brands like Sabyasachi. And we have Josh Dobbins from Flint Culture, who again is an organization that handles a lot of interesting art, design, and relevant creative brands. So it was so interesting to see these conversations overlap. The end result being that there is so much that goes beyond the realm of what we do as designers and architects. There's an entire creative community that is integrated with each other. I'm so excited to introduce today's panels, but before that, we're going to show you a short clip, which essentially is kind of like a like an add-on to why we put on these sessions. It's called Little Things We Do. For us, the little things we do culminate into big ideas, big hopes, big dreams, big visions. So yeah, we hope this video inspires you in a little way. Yes, you can play the video. Yeah.
We are Godrej. That's us in ruby, green, and blue. And this is a story of the little things we do. It started with a little thing we made to protect you and your things. Over 100 years on, we're still doing the same, except it now has wings. Little things that'll take you places you can't get to on an airplane. And little things that circle the earth and tell our farmers when it'll rain. Little things that keep our animal friends hale and hearty. And little things that keep kids healthy and naughty. Little things that keep not just our homes, but even medicines and vaccines cool. And little things that rinse away dirt and allergens, so your little ones don't miss a day of school. Little things that make washing hands so much fun. And some that make your cars and homes smell like spring. Little things that keep diseases away. And some that make your hair shine and swing. Little things that help you make things. Big, small, and everything in between. And little things that help carry those things to places far and even unseen. Little things, or should we say little spaces, where you live, work and play. And little things you keep in those spaces to sit, sleep, or just put things away. Locks, soaps, buildings and missiles. Well, there are quite a few. These are some of the little things we do.
So, well, taking on from the little things that we do, we want to bring in our first panel. Before I make the introductions, I just have a quick announcement for all our speakers. Please feel free to leave your comments and your questions in the chat box below. We'll try to weave them into the conversation. We are also, while we are doing this on Zoom live right now, we are also streaming live on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. If anybody from those platforms wants to join the Zoom link, please feel free to do that. It might be a little more interactive. But if you are on social media platforms, you can also leave your comments and questions there, and we'll pick them up from there. So the idea here is to have an open conversation and to engage with everyone together. So feel free to please participate in whichever manner you feel. The first panel that we've got today, and we actually don't like calling them panels and panelists because it's an open discussion. So the first discussion that we're having today is titled Pit Stops and Changing Tracks. For us, the way we defined it was talking about a dichotomy of whether one should specialize or super specialize in areas of design to become industry experts. So there's been this sort of this wave where people have, when people would go through especially professional degrees and professional education, and the question would then arise whether we should specialize further or we should diversify from what we are doing. And that's where this whole thing arose from. On the other hand, we question whether fluidity of our stream demands professionals that are diverse and adaptable, right? Architecture and design, being very wholesome studies, often provide the fundamentals needed to explore affiliated fields, leading to graduates being more likely than not to pursue a pure or traditional professional practice. How does one cope in light of changing directions, renewed aspirations, and altered choices, especially when faced with mid-career shifts? And we've got a fascinating set of people who've actually experienced that. Sneha, can I ask you to introduce them for us, please?
Yes, absolutely, Manali. We're so excited to have these eminent people in the creative realm join us today. We have Kunal Bhatia. Hi, Kunal. Kunal studied architecture at KRVIA Mumbai and has been working across disciplines of photography, writing, and design since 2010. After initially practicing architecture and interior design, he now focuses on photography, having shot hundreds of projects across typology scales and design languages. He's also a widely published travel and design writer and a travel photographer, both under the banner of Rickety Roads. I like that, Rickety Roads. His works have been published in print and on the web, including international journals. He also conducts workshops on photography and on the different aspects of running an architectural or interior design studio, covering creative, technical, and business topics relevant to the spatial design professions. Good to have you with us, Kunal.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
All right. Next, we have Marianne Udisha. Hi, Marianne. Thank you so much for joining us. So Marianne started her career in Paris before moving to New York and creating Toka. Am I pronouncing it right? Is it Toka?
Yeah, Toka. Yeah.
Toka, yeah, Toka fashion label. She's a winner of the Perry Ellis Fashion Award, and then she relocated to India, went on to create the widely popular Bar Palladio. It's one of the most photographed bars in the country. She's also won the AD Designer of the Year award 3 years running, and she's created beautiful public and private spaces around the world. Always her signature style is of unexpected and unique color palettes and magical detailing. The spaces created by her have the same inimitable, dreamlike quality, drawing on inspiration from history while consistently being fresh and flawlessly innovative. Thank you so much for joining us, Marianne. We can't wait to hear your stories. Then, of course, we have Sameer Kulavoor. Hi, Sameer. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Sneha. Thanks
So
for having me.
Sameer, hi. So Sameer is a visual artist. He lives and works in Bombay. His work lies in the intersection of art, graphic design, and contemporary illustration, and has taken the form of paintings, murals, books, zines, prints, and objects. He's interested in why things look and work the way we do, constantly noting and understanding the impact that time, culture, politics, and the socio-economic conditions have on our visible and invisible surroundings. In this age of visual overload indeed, his work involves filtering, dissecting, documenting, and defamiliarizing commonly seen subjects through the act of drawing, painting, and design, often oscillating between instinctive and conceptual methods of making. Thank you so much, Sameer. Then we have the lovely Sana. Thank you so much. Futures thinker. She's a strategist, journalist, and is a designer as well. She started as a fashion designer and then dove deeper into the world of societal changes and new phenomena. As a trend analyst with years of experience, her passion is to uncover the possible futures, to connect the dots, and put her findings into a larger context. As an inspiring and experienced speaker, her topics range from future trends, future living, consumer behavior, shift of values, sustainability, future works, health, food, and so many other similar subjects. She also teaches and works as a foresight specialist for projects at Labs Institute of Design, creates phenomena reports for her clients, and curates exhibitions as well. Thank you so much, Susanna, for joining us. And as you can see, we have a diverse panel with very interesting work trajectories for each one of them. I'm going to start off by asking a very simple question. Because each one of you have maybe started or used education as a foundation to set your career to a certain direction, and then you diversified, right? I wanted to understand from you, do you remember that moment you realized that you needed to change tracks, or you had no choice but to pivot? Maybe I can have Kunal start with this first, and then each of our panelists here can take turns to answer. Do you remember the moment you realized that you needed to change tracks, or that you had no choice but to pivot?
Interesting question to start off with. I think I remember this was in my final year of architecture school. Photography was a hobby till then, but towards the end of my formal architecture education, I felt that it could be more than just a hobby. And I was keen to explore the built design environment via photography. So I think that was the starting point. I had to convince myself to finish my architecture studies and not abandon them at the last minute. But I did, and then as you mentioned, did work as a professional designer, but then photography as a passion kept growing, kept increasing, and then slowly I made the transition into photography full time. This was the first pivot in that sense, yes.
Right. Susanna, do you want to share your journey? How did you go from designer to journalism to teaching and then being a trends analyst? How did that happen for you?
That's a long
story. Was it organic or was it unplanned?
That's a long story. Do we have like 2 weeks? Well, in my case, it happened so that I was a designer and I was practicing fashion as a designer full-time designer. And then I took the step to start freelancing. I got offered things to do, like fashion editorials for a really cool indie magazine, some wardrobe design for TV commercials and print campaigns and this and that. So somehow at some point I realized that those things actually interested in me more. Then it was a natural thing to continue writing as well, as I was doing the visuals. But I've always been the sort of person who feels that I'm faking and I'm not good enough if I don't also study some more. So I took some classes in creative writing in order to continue writing. And then I was doing bits and pieces. And then I was asked to come and talk, to give a lecture. And I realized I really enjoyed that. And then I wanted to go deeper. And then I got interested in where do the trends actually come from? And what is this? How does the society and megatrends and all these sort of matters, how do they affect the visual trends? So then I went back to university for my master's course, which was something totally different. It was visual culture, not fashion at all. And that I took classes in futures research and so forth. And it's life, right. It's happened. But I've also then found myself in sort of very uncomfortable moments thinking, oh no, what am I doing here? I mean, I knew everything I was doing and I don't know anything now, but I'm still here and I'm doing it.
Yeah. I could completely relate. Absolutely. Especially when you say uncomfortable moments, that uncomfortable moment that pushed you in a certain direction. Maria, and coming to you, for you, it has been an interesting journey too. You started out as a fashion designer and then you made your way to interior design. So did that interior design journey happen when you came to India? Can you tell us a little bit about that? And was that an uncomfortable moment for you at the beginning?
No, actually not. I lived in New York and I had a very successful brand at that time. And I was really, really young. And I just felt, and it was instinct that I felt was not right in the company. And I just made the decision to leave the company, which was completely crazy because it was doing very, very well at that point. And I just decided to change because I felt that I could do that at that time. I was not thinking of doing anything else. I was thinking I could design something else later on in my life. And after that, I moved from New York to Rome and then to Madrid. And during these years, everybody always wanted me to redesign the same kind of things and making things, and I consulted. But because people like the things that you do, they want you always to do the same kind of things again. And I moved totally by accident to India. And somebody asked me to design the bar. I never thought about doing interiors or anything like that. So it was not something that I was prepared for or taught for or studied or anything. Obviously, I love design, but it was not something that I was really prepared for. And I just did it. I mean, I didn't, it was not planned at all. And so Bar Palladio was my first project in India. After many years. And the most incredible thing after that, when I did this bar, all the people that I actually knew from the fashion world in New York or in Paris or anywhere, they reconnected with me immediately because somehow they recognized the style on the feeling. Yeah. It didn't really change, actually. It's very funny how after you haven't seen people for years, you just reconnect. So it was never planned. Nothing was planned.
Nothing was planned. Right. That's amazing. Yeah.
No studies for it, nothing at all. It's just...
I think it's fascinating where while some of you, your journeys have been circumstantial, where like Susanna said, right, life just happened. I think for me, it was similar. I practiced architecture and then I got into media and teaching and all of that just because opportunities came my way. But for some people, I think, Kunal, for you, it was like a concerted effort and a decision saying that, okay, I am going to change tracks now, right? It's also interesting to see how some people have diversified from what they were doing, while some have completely changed, right? Like for Marianne, it was a leap of faith saying that, okay, I'm going to move to India, I'm going to move across continents and start up over here. Sameer, tell us about you, because you've had an interesting journey and not many people know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you stemmed from advertising at some point?
Yeah, I mean, I studied applied art, which means commercial art, and this was early 2000s. And after that, I studied, I mean, graphic design and illustration as well, which were like my specialization. So after that, very naturally, I kind of got into illustration, and one thing led to another, and I started doing motion graphics for a lot of TV channels. And I used to work for a lot of agencies, illustrations for ads and for branding, etc., etc. And the first decade was just that. I mean, I just kept at it. But around 2009, 10, I started sensing this kind of burnout, with just the fact that, the amount of interaction with people and, the things that come with that, right? I mean, you're always working on briefs and you're working towards an end. I tried to push my own ideas through those 10 years, but at some point I realized that I want my ideas to be out there in the purest form, in the way I'm thinking. So even if I'm thinking of a series of illustrations or anything, I mean, I wanted to pick the right tool to draw it, right? And those kind of choices were always kind of there were things to consider before taking those choices. I just couldn't do it because a brief would need me to work in a certain way. So that kind of became, I started feeling an unrest after like 10 years. And I gradually started diversifying. Like I started printing my own books. I started self-publishing, just, to put my work out there in the way I see it, the way I imagine it, without any kind of dilution. And I mean, your question is like if there was one point, but it wasn't. In my case, it was like a long transition, which I can now look at in retrospect. I mean, I've spent the next 10 years working on a range of very independent projects. In 2015, I started painting. I went back to painting and I started that process, which is like a completely different mind space than, a design process. I mean, you can on the surface see a lot of overlaps, but the way you work is completely different, right? When you're doing art, you wake up in the morning with nothing. There is absolutely no brief. There is no motivation. I mean, there's no one to tell you what to do. So in that sense, it was like, wow, I mean, this is great. There is a sense of growth. There's a sense of newness, and it gave me a new lease of life. And
Perhaps a
then
sense of liberation.
absolutely, like it was really freeing for me. I could work freely and think freely.
That's really interesting. Sneha, you and I were talking about this whole idea of, this coming out of like how our previous experiences have kind of influenced what we are doing today. And Marianne touched upon that. Sneha?
Yeah. The whole idea of transitioning from one career to the next. Sometimes it's right in front of you. Like maybe Marianne, in your case, you started out as a fashion designer, but interior design happened by chance. But do you think that interior design happened because of your experience as a fashion designer? Or how did that happen to you? What experiences from fashion design kind of inspired you to, build your career as an interior designer? What were the overlaps?
I think that the person who asked me, obviously, to design the bar, Barbara Miolini, she knew that I had worked in fashion, and I think that she just thought that I could do it for some reason. But I think the way how I approached it at that time was really like a fashion collection, like it's the way you find the colors, how you deal with the organization. And I just did it like that. I think that everybody who makes something has a certain taste, so you function in that kind of way. I think that it was not particularly because I was a fashion designer that I'm now an interior designer. I think it was also that when I was younger, I was maybe much more interested in clothes, and I'm a little bit older, and it's interesting to do spaces. Also, I'm completely grown out of doing anything in fashion at this point. But I think it's a journey. I never thought about it, so it was very impulsive, everything. And after that, for me, the interesting thing is that to do spaces, it's like everybody can actually enjoy it. And when you make clothes, it's quite personal. Like not everybody can maybe wear the clothes or fit the clothes, or it's not their style. This is, yeah, I don't know how to explain it. It just was all very spontaneous.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I get it because I can relate to, like, I mean, I'm a journalist by profession, by education. And for the longest time, I had this bullheaded dream that I wanted to head a magazine, and that happened. But I realized that when that happened, it didn't feel like a dream fulfilled. So I knew that at that point that I needed to find something that would meet a sense of fulfillment, a sense of fulfilling a social aspect as well, and also kind of incorporate the skills that I had as a journalist into something else, and that could be in design and that could be in architecture. So I wanted to understand, maybe Susanna can answer this one. How does did you realize at a certain point that diversification was key for you, or did that happen to you just as you went along, from one task or one challenge to the next career challenge?
I think it took many years for me to understand that, and
Right.
also the shift from fashion design to everything else that I did was much bigger step. And actually, I have to say that I felt at some points, say I went to Paris to see the shoes as a journalist, I did feel sad that I had a career behind. I felt like a loser for a while because in the 90s, that was not so common thing to do, is to leave behind everything that you've been for many years.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it wasn't easy, and it took many years for me to sort of see that, yes, that's who I am. I am the sort of person who needs to do many things, but at the same time, most of those things that I'm doing and have done have something to do with design anyway. So it's like a circle.
Yeah, it's interconnected. Everything that you do interconnects, or the last part, or the last kind of this is kind.
True.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
I don't know about the audience, but I'm fascinated by the conversation that we're having, because this brings out a lot of my personal journey where, Susanna, I felt that I can't keep doing one thing. I get bored easily. I want to do different things, and I want all my fingers should be in different pies. Becomes a little bit of a struggle sometimes, but it's also, it keeps you going in some way, right? And I wanted to ask Kunal this, because I'm really intrigued by this idea of, it's one thing to be trained in a certain craft and then use that to do different things. And I know you do that as well in your photography. And I'm sure that if you hadn't been trained as an architect, the way that you look at spaces and the way you capture spaces would be very different, right? But this idea of coming to a point and saying that, okay, I don't know if I really want to do this. I've been at that point. Third year of my education, I called up my mom one day and I said, you know what, I don't want to do architecture, I want to do medicine. And I think her jaw dropped. I could hear it drop to the floor. And she said, what is wrong with you? Both my parents are doctors. And she said, for all these years when everybody else was talking about it, you said, no, you're resisting medicine. And suddenly in third year of architecture. So she said, finish architecture. And then if you still want to do medicine, go ahead and do it. I think that was the soundest piece of advice I ever got, because by the time I was done with my 5 years, I was like, hell no, I'm not going back to school again right now. But
you might later on.
I might. That's true. We'll see how that goes. I'll keep you posted. But there is that idea of, reaching that point where you feel that, okay, I don't want to do this. But that also means that you need to feel very strongly to be able to do something different, right? You want to talk a little bit about that for us?
Okay, so a couple of things here. I think I completely agree with everything that you and Susanna just mentioned. One is that everything comes around in a circle. If I hadn't studied architecture, I would have probably not gotten into architectural photography. And I would definitely not be photographing spaces in a certain manner that I inherently do. So that's completely true over there. With regards to what you mentioned towards the end, that I went to the same thing. So my family didn't want me to study architecture in the very beginning, and I convinced them that I will. And then by the end of it, when I said, oh, no architecture anymore, I think photography is the thing. So then they were also like, now, after all these years, you tell us this. But thankfully, they were supportive, and I'm glad I finished my studies, because I think going through that process also opens up a certain level of skill that one may not otherwise develop because of the rigor and the intensity involved in the educational process. It opens up one to new techniques, to networks that one can then use in whatever one chooses to do in the future. And of course, everything that, at least for me, everything that I do, whether it's related to design or photography or writing, they kind of inform each other in some manner or the other. So I feel the entire journey would have been incomplete had even one of these three things not been there in it. It's sometimes hard to pinpoint a tangible that because this happened, it became like this, but I know it's been an inherent part of the process.
But Kunal, tell me, do you feel that you've kind of, if you had been trained as a photographer, do you feel that you would have had certain disadvantages, or do you feel that there's an advantage for practicing as a photographer, but not having been trained as one? Like breaking the shackles of education in a certain way.
I would say both things. That maybe if I was trained as a photographer, certain technical aspects of the craft would have been much easier for me to grasp, which otherwise took me years of trial and error and self-study and research to kind of figure out. But then, since I practice within architectural photography, I don't necessarily think a formal training in photography would have helped understand spaces.
Right.
So the reverse is probably more true. And architectural education opened out avenues to photography, but maybe, especially the way photography is taught broadly in India, vis-a-vis the way architecture is taught, I think the architecture education tends to be more broader in its scope, allows you to kind of diversify, which may not necessarily be true broadly. I know I'm generalizing over here, for the way photography education tends to be. But there's always pros and cons. Somebody who studied photography or studied a particular thing, they'll grow by leaps and bounds when it comes to certain aspects of that profession. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sneha, go ahead.
So we have sorry, I was just going through some audience questions that are coming in. Thought we could weave some of them in. We have one from our social media where someone is asking, what is the role of quality in design? What is the role of quality in design? I think this could be a separate discussion itself, but maybe if you had to summarize it in a sentence or two, or if you had to explain it to a non-design person, how would you explain this in your own words? Maybe Sameer, you can
I was just going to say, Sameer, given that you're not practicing as a designer, how do you feel about it?
Well, quality in design is, firstly, it's a very subjective, it's so different for everyone. What is good quality, what is bad quality? I mean, like when you look at specifics like material and those kind of things, that's a different thing altogether. But quality could also mean what kind of aesthetics does one prefer, or what is your liking, what kind of colors or what kind of textures do you like, those kind of things. I mean, importance of quality in design, it's so like subjective, I guess. There's no one way to answer that.
Yeah, I think each can have their own unique response to that question. Susanna or Marianne, do you want to maybe answer this one? What do you think is the role of quality in design, or in the design that you do?
The role of quality is everything. It should be everything. And quality, of course, there's, say, if you think of a product, say a piece of clothing or something, well, if it lasts for a long time, then it has some sort of quality. But that's also very subjective. And often in the fashion discourse, people, and also when you're talking about interiors or something, it's always, well, not everybody, but quite often, especially coming from North, the discourse is always that, oh, something what is quality and longer lasting should be very not plain, not very colorful, very classical and plain. And I'm always arguing against that, because I'm saying that one should think what is your own personal taste, your own personality, and go from there. And if you like color, if you like crazy things, then your taste doesn't change as fast as, for instance, trends or whatever. And then that's quality for you to get products like that, or organize or design your home that way. But of course, there is certain quality, and we should aim for sustainability and these sort of matters, and that's quality as well. And there's quality in how things are made and under what sort of circumstances and social and blah, blah, blah. It's very, I mean, again, it's another subject.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Susanna. Maybe coming back to, go ahead, Banani.
Another very interesting question for Marianne, in fact, and it asks, how do you break perceptions that come with your shift in practice? How do you manage to get potent projects across all the disciplines that you enjoy working in? And it's interesting, I thought it'd be interesting for you to answer, considering you must have faced various challenges as well, right? Having come into a new location, geographically, you're in a new area. In terms of the work that you're doing, you're in a completely new area. So how do you feel about that? Breaking perceptions that come with the shift in practice. Coming from a very successful fashion design brand.
I think it's all about telling stories. I don't know. It's all, I mean, I don't really think about it too much. It's just comes from your heart. You just go with it. And I think that it's impulsive. It's you learn a lot. I think that all these years that I actually, from going from fashion to interiors, I learned a lot of the things that, were before very, I don't know, easy or something. I don't know how to explain it. The process is really interesting, I think. But I think here of being doing things that you not have done before is really, it's a challenge, and a challenge is very inspiring in every way. So I think, it works like that.
What about you, Samir, given that you're known more for being an artist today, and I guess that's where your sort of reputation and people perceive you as an artist, where do your thoughts lie on this?
Well, actually, Marianne made a very interesting point about instinct. I think that is, key word here, I think, with this discussion, especially because we tend to not give that much importance to instinct. I mean, when I was making a transition, I didn't even know that I was doing it. Like now I can look back and I can analyze everything that I did, and everything is following a certain.
Sorry, we seem to have lost Samir.
This is the song.
As an artist, you find yourself, making shifts in style or material or, things like that. And I feel like at that point, if your instinct is strong about something, it's good to follow your instinct. And then figure out, why you did what you did. Sometimes it's just better to work back. I mean, think about things backwards. And not stop yourself at, at the outset. When you're feeling so strongly for something, it's also like conviction, right? If someone was asking me about how easy it is to switch between design and art, and I was thinking about it, and it felt like in design the problem is out. There is a problem that you need to solve. In art, you are the problem. You are the issue. Like what does it mean to you? So it's so like, I feel like the most important shift is that kind of perspective where you're looking inwards, where I'm looking inwards now, rather than looking outwards and thinking about, what should be done. It's more like design is more like a service in some sense. And for me now, I'm just looking inwards. What do I feel for the most? What things, bother me, or, stuff like that. So that is a shift I have experienced.
Kunal, you had something to add.
Yes, to the second part of your question, I think the person asked, how do you get potent projects
Yes.
when you work across multiple disciplines? I think especially in the very beginning, when one has just made that transition, one has to become one's own client in some manner and set one's own brief to kind of produce the work that one wants to produce, to whatever extent it's possible, of course. Because especially when you switched fields in whatever manner, people don't know of you, they may not necessarily trust your abilities in that particular new field. And so one does need to produce that work, show that commitment to it. And along with that, there's a second step, which I think a lot of us in the design fields kind of shy away from, is to showcase and share that work. Because it's one thing to be doing great work, but it's also another thing, especially one is doing it commercially, to put it out there, to spread word about it, to let people know of it without feeling any guilt in any manner or shying away from any imposter syndrome of any sorts. That questioning will always be there. Is this good enough? Is this not? Why am I doing this? For whom am I doing it? But I think it does become important to share what one is doing with the larger world. Just put it out there. The internet makes it a lot simpler to do this these days, and then see what comes your way from that.
Yeah. I mean, I like both of your perspectives, and I like the fact that Sami said that, it starts with you. You have to kind of solve like an equation for yourself first. So I think that does make sense to me personally. There are a lot of audience questions coming in, so we're going to try leaving more of that in. So we have
also, if I can just add, Sneha, like you said,
please,
if you have curiosities about each other's work and working, please feel to ask each other as well. The idea is to have like an open discussion, so jump in at any time.
All right, so we have Koyal asking us. Koyal, thank you so much for your question. She says, thank you for such a wonderful session. How do you break perceptions that come with your shifting practices? You did that already? Yeah, I'm so sorry. Yeah, just 1 second. There is one more. Yeah, this particular question is for Marianne. Post-pandemic, but everyone else is free to add in if need be. Question for Marianne. Post-pandemic, with increasing trends of staying home and going virtual, would you consider design for virtual spaces? And to you, is there a difference between live, real, or virtual in terms of experiencing spaces? This question is from a designer from South Africa. Her name is Sham Baloi. She says, with increasing trends of staying home and going virtual, would you consider design for virtual spaces? And to you, is there a difference between live, real, or virtual in terms of experiencing spaces?
I think it's completely different. I think we're making a lot of presentations virtual, what is we do in the computer to show to clients and things like that. And it is a completely different feeling, especially because we work a lot with artists. So every single time when we work with artists, it gives a feeling in the space. When you do something in the computer, you don't put that feeling. But even if you, whatever love you put into the work, you don't really feel it into the computer. So I think I'm not sure if whatever I do in a virtual presentation will be the same as when it is real. I must say though that we have done virtual presentations who look exactly as the space that we have created in real. But I don't know if will have the same feeling. I think that real is real in the end, for sure. Not the same. I think when you,
So Marianne is not a fan of virtual conversations and virtual design in any case. Actual space, dealing with interacting with actual space.
I do everything from my heart. I'm very instinctive, so it's difficult for me. The computer is, it's more flat also.
Yeah, Mrinalini, go ahead.
No, I was saying, Susanna, maybe this is a good time for you to jump in, given that you are an expert trend analyst and forecaster. Maybe you have some insights into how things are going to change, or are they?
Well, that's a long, broad question as well. But the thing is that we haven't really changed as human beings since the Stone Ages, which is good to remember also. Okay, internet has changed a lot. And like here we are now all over the world. talking to each other, which is really nice. But we still are the same people who need the tactile, who need these experiences. We are social animals and so on. So I don't think we are, I think we're gonna have more diversity in the future, and you're gonna have things that are work better virtually, and then you have the live world, and which is never gonna be going away. It's like when you think that, okay, it's the end of a book, and now you just have digital books. I don't think so. I think that there are people still, okay, there might be older generation, whatever, they still like to have their books as books and whatever. And luckily we have the possibility for both. And there's some, because some things just don't work virtually and you miss a lot. And some things work better.
That's true. Like we've been talking about this, the fact that all of us are sitting in different parts of the world has been a massive advantage, and we're being able to have this conversation. But at the same time, we feel that it would be very, very different if all of us were in the same room, just in terms of the quality of the conversation, what we say, how we think, how we even interact with each other, and respond to each other would be very different.
Yeah, and how we read each other's micro gestures, and we know when somebody is going to say something, so that we don't just jump on and start talking on top of somebody and whatever. And anyway, I would have loved to travel to India. Anyway, I miss India.
Well, perhaps we can request Ghost. We should do this in Finland next year. We all come there instead.
Okay.
Yeah, I always wanted to, I mean, we all have our niches in a way, our original niches in a way. I wanted to ask if any of you have ever felt FOMO, that is fear of missing out, or fear of going back to what you originally studied or what you originally set out to do. Maybe Kunal, you can answer that question. Do you ever dream about, or have like these phantom dreams where you would build spaces or build things again? Or is that part of the future dream?
Sometimes I do have like, because I also photograph spaces. I'm never completely cut away from it. I'm always interacting with them, meeting other designers. So I do wish that, maybe sometimes I will, but it's also something that I don't rule out as a possibility. It might happen a few years down the line. So it's always good to keep all options open and to just see where one's dreams take one, and whatever one imagines, whether it comes to life or not.
What about you, Sameer? Do you ever see yourself going back to advertising, or maybe a form of advertising, maybe?
Absolutely not. I mean, like, as a creative person, you are always looking for that kind of freedom and independence. And when I was in design and illustration, like, it was a peak, and it was pretty lucrative. And I had to make, the whole shift took like 7 to 8 years. I had my sister who was a strong support, Zina, and it took a lot, like a lot of sacrifices, a lot of things that I had to give up. So going back now is like out of question. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing right now. I'm excited about the future and what that holds. I like that I'm back to the stagnancy has gone away. When I was practicing design illustration, I don't have that feeling anymore. I'm very excited about learning new things and unlearning things that were probably like ingrained. So I don't think I would like to, and even if I would, there's no way I could even like switch back or something like that. Like I said the other day, once you, if you know how to fly, why would you walk again? Something like that.
But do you think that there might be other people who haven't had that sort of, like you've had a very liberating, very positive experience, right?
Yeah.
I know of people who feel that they've burnt their fingers, where they've made that switch and they've tried to experiment with something and they've fallen flat on their faces. Right. What kind of advice, perhaps, would you want to give someone like that? And how do you pick yourself up and start walking again?
Yeah, I've been asked this question about, okay, how do you make that switch? I tell students and professionals who want to do it, my outright advice is to not do it. Don't do it. Like, don't switch. Like, unless you are 100%, unless you have that conviction and the desperate need to do it, there's no point doing it, because it will suck everything out of you. It will drain you out. There will be times when you'll have a financial pinch. I mean, your support system can collapse. It's torment. So I always tell people, don't make a switch unless you're 100%. You have the conviction that, yeah, okay, there's nothing else that I want to do more than this. If you're not prepared for that, then there's no point going in it like half-hearted. And I mean, once you've done it, I mean, the only thing I can say is just keep at it. Failures happen. Everyone has gone through it. I have had my share of failures. There have been times when things have been dry, but I have one thing that really worked for me is my support system. Like I said, like my sister, who's also a talented creative person. She works in Urdu calligraphy and she runs Bombay Design Studio that I founded in 2008. And we had a great 5-6 years where there was a transition for me and for her, and so we could help each other out through the worst times. So that was a great help, to have that strong backing, right? And you prepare yourself for something like this. Like if there is a switch, you make sure that you have enough life safeguards, or you have enough padding to fall upon, and not break your head.
I think that's really interesting and a very sound, but also very hard advice, right? That you're giving people, that if you're not sure about it, if you're not 100%, don't do it. I think a lot of that would be true for people who want to make a distinct switch as well. But if you want to start to diversify, like what Marianne or Susanna have done, and I think Susanna, this might apply to you more, because you haven't reached a point and then turned in a certain direction. You've kind of forked out, and you've tried different things and you continue to try different things. So in fact, we've got a question from our audience. There's this Abhishek Chaudhary who's saying, how should one be focused on the path he or she takes while facing difficulties? So while Sameer, you've kind of addressed that, if you're looking at changing completely. Susanna, do you want to add something to that in terms of when you're trying out different things, right? Because you will face struggles and there will be challenges and you have to prioritize one above the other. How do you face that?
Well, actually, as I teach now a lot, and there are students who are sort of thinking that, oh, I don't know if this is if this is the correct field for me, maybe I should switch in the middle of their studies. And I always say that I believe that with the design education, I recommend them to stick with it and do it. Because after that, they're still young anyways, and then they can do whatever and they can study whatever, but at least then you have one degree. And whatever you end up doing, you still have the degree, and then you can switch your life and do whatever. But it's also another thing I say, that I'm so sorry, but that's what life is about, that sometimes you really have to struggle. Sometimes some courses don't feel relevant, or some parts of a certain education or doesn't feel nice, or something you like to do, and it feels really hard. Well, it's the same thing when you work. You will have projects that are not so interesting, not so easy, and whatever, and that's called life. So in a way, I don't know, I mean, it's just not easy, but you shouldn't give up. And I think that even if you end up switching to something else, it never goes to waste, because you're so much richer with that background. And then you are also, you can look at a challenge outside the box when you have another field of work or studies or something behind you. It never goes to waste, because that's what I get to hear as well.
I think that's
No,
such
it's
good
not.
advice for, yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's what I get to hear quite a lot. That somebody said that, oh, I was a nurse, but I always wanted to become a designer, and then I made the switch, and now I'm designing, and oh, I wasted 10 years out of my life. I said, no, you're so much richer as a designer now that you have that sort of experience in you.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's such great advice for students and even people who are wanting to study, beyond, because even if you're not sure about what you want to do, it's important to have a foundational course with you handy, and then you can always diversify, whether you want to join a college or, you have so many options online now that offer you such great courses and at such nominal prices too. So there's always that choice to, even education allows you to diversify now. So I think for students to realize that, and for students to have opportunities now, as opposed to say 5 years or even 10 years ago, I think that's really great advice, Susanna. So thanks for sharing that. Just to sum up, and just lastly, if you had to give advice to self-taught designers and self-taught artists, mainly, even self-taught photographers in this instance, who don't really have any formative training, but maybe could benefit from a certain kind of training, what advice would you give them? Maybe we can start, Marianne, with you. What advice would you give any self-taught designer or an artist, who's wanting to kind of progress in a certain direction? What advice would you give them?
Never to give up, just to follow your heart, I think. I think it's really important just to go for it. I mean, you make mistakes and you learn from it all the time. And I think throughout life, you do it. But if you don't do it, you regret it, I think. So I think you should follow your heart, even if it's difficult.
Yeah, aptly said, Marianne. Well said and aptly said. Thank you so much for sharing that. Samir, what about you? What advice would you give a self-taught artist? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess like instinct, like one needs to like keep a, understand their instincts. And I think that could really help. We say gut feeling, and that exists. It really does. And I've seen a lot of, designers or illustrators, or artists who are not had training, formal training, but they're doing great. But I've also seen so many of them who had a formal training, but they're doing something completely different, like they're writing. So I guess like both works. Just trust your instinct, I guess.
Great. Thank you so much, Samir. That's again very aptly said. Rely on your gut feeling. Listen to what your gut tells you. Yeah. Kunal, what about you? What advice would you give?
Similar to what Samir just mentioned, believe in yourself. If you have that instinct that you want to do this for a reason, just go with that. Don't let any doubt hold you back, and just experiment till you find your own path. You have to carve it out, but you will be able to carve out your own path.
Absolutely. Yes, Susanna. Go ahead. Thank you so much, Kunal. Yeah.
I think that you should also try to know what sort of person you are, because, for instance, I am the sort of person that I need to study, but it doesn't mean that I have to have another degree after degree. But what I'm saying is that this world, it's never been easier to all up virtual courses and all courses from the teachers and schools and whatever. So you can also do that if you don't have a formal training, you can take bits and pieces and, open university courses or whatever to get, if you feel that's what you need. I always need that when I switch and diversify. I always try to take some courses at least. Maybe I have really bad self-esteem or something, but I feel I need to sort of make it more credible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, when I said instinct, I mean, obviously that's the first step, to listen to your instinct, but there are a lot of practical things that you've got to do. Like, doing your research, who else is working in a similar fashion, or what kind of, what is my area of concern, what are my aesthetics? So all those questions I mean, complete thought process that you have to then like train yourself in.
I think that's some very sound advice from all of you, and it's
Yeah.
interesting to see because you must tune into your instinct. You must know what you want to do. You must identify that, but then you might be wrong as well, right? So experiment, try out different things. It's like I know a friend of mine who shut down his furniture manufacturing factory and went back after a 10-year practice as an intern at an architectural practice just to see whether he wants to go back into architecture or not. And I think what's like, Susanna, you rightly pointed out that today we are at a point in time where we've got all the resources at hand, right? You've got online classes, you've got courses that you can do sitting in the comfort of your home. You can be studying at a Harvard if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
So you have the resources. You have people who are open to this kind of experimentation, and you have people who are accepting of these changes. So I think if not now, I mean, I don't know, but I don't think things have been as open and as sort of, fertile for change as earlier. So I think that's some very sound advice to all our audience. But unfortunately, we're running short of time, so we're going to have to close here. But we've got some very interesting conversations coming up. I would encourage all of you to stay on if you can and join the other conversations as well. Interestingly, we also spoke about some mistakes and failures in this conversation, which kind of rolls right into the next one. But we are going to take a short break before we start the next. But thank you all so much for being here today. Marianne, Susanna, Samir, Kunal, for taking out your time and sharing your journeys and your experience. On behalf of Sneha, me, and the entire team at Godrej, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, dear panelists. You can stay on if you'd like. If you have some time, please stay on for the next two panels because we would love for you to be there, listen in, and add in your inputs wherever needed. So
yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. All right, for everyone else, we'll be starting our next session in the next few minutes. Give us about 5 minutes to come back to you. Yeah, and we'll see you soon. Yeah.
Thank you all.
5 minutes. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
We are Godrej. That's us in ruby, green, and blue. And this is a story of the little things we do. It started with a little thing we made to protect you and your things. Over 100 years on, we're still doing the same, except it now has wings. Little things that'll take you places you can't get to on an airplane. And little things that circle the earth and tell our farmers when it'll rain. Little things that keep our animal friends hale and hearty. And little things that keep kids healthy and naughty. Little things that keep not just our homes, but even medicines and vaccines cool. And little things that rinse away dirt and allergens, so your little ones don't miss a day of school. Little things that make washing hands so much fun. And some that make your cars and homes smell like spring. Little things that keep diseases away. And some that make your hair shine and swing. Little things that help you make things, big, small, and everything in between. And little things that help carry those things to places far and even unseen. Little things, or should we say little spaces, where you live, work and play, and little things you keep in those spaces to sit, sleep, or just put things away. Locks, soaps, buildings and missiles. Well, there are quite a few. These are some of the little things we do.
We've got Vaishali, Anthony, and Ant. Ant, you can
I
switch on
can't.
your video now. Vaishali?
Yes, Vaishali?
Yes. Now, no, I can't switch on my video somehow. I don't know.
All
Hold
right.
on. We'll
Supreet?
get the admins to do that.
Okay.
Supreet, yeah, there you are.
Hi, Vaishali. Good to see you. Hello,
Okay.
Anthony, and hi, Anne.
Good to see you.
all.
Hi
Yeah.
there.
All right.
Hi,
So
everybody.
this.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, good to see everyone. A quick introduction to this very interesting session, which Manani and I are really excited about. It's called My Favorite Mistakes. What is the session about? I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but I'm going to add a little more context to this. When we all see the pretty pictures, in the end, it is a process, oftentimes a long, arduous journey, riddled with professional hiccups, personal trials, and many failures that defines the final outcome. So why do we disregard that part and focus only on the end? Is the result the only determining factor that outlines success? What defines success and how does one achieve it? Rising to challenges and converting them into opportunities is probably the greatest learning. So does that make learning the greatest measure of success? And we're so excited to have this panel today. Manani, why don't you do the honors?
Thank you, Sneha. Like she said, we are very excited to have a very esteemed set of people with us talking about this subject today. We've got Anthony Lopez, who joins us from Delhi, Gurgaon, actually. Hi, Anthony. Thank you for being here.
Hello, everybody. Thank you.
So Anthony's ready with his notes and his papers and everything. Huh? Good to go.
Anthony's ready to present his case.
Yes. So Anthony is the founder and principal of Lopez Design. He guides his studio practice with a clear purpose, delivering path-breaking solutions. He embraces collaborative practices and interdisciplinary engagement to work on large and complex branding, spatial and wayfinding projects for businesses and organizations. And he's an alumni of the NID with a master's in visual communication. He strongly advocates his philosophy of design interventions for long-term impact and sustainability, and promotes design as a way to find unique indigenous solutions, rigorously championing a humanistic and contextual approach. When he's not working, Anthony's dreaming up his next breakthrough, and we're hoping that he can share some of that with us today. We're also joined by Vaishali. Vaishali began experimenting with handwoven textiles and their applications at a very young age. A graduate in engineering, she pursued fashion at the Pearl Academy in Delhi and subsequently attained a master's degree at the Domus Academy in Milan. With accolades such as the Best Indian Designer of the Year, Best Trending Brand at the New York Fashion Week, and the Adidas, among various others, she has extended her work with textiles to art and design, infusing it with spontaneity, intuitiveness, and a reflection of her own experiences with nature. Vaishali has been working to revive Indian hand weaving techniques while making a positive social impact on the families of weavers across the country, and recently launched her flagship store in Mumbai. She was also this year's membre invitée at the Paris Haute Couture Week, the first Indian woman to have achieved this. A massive congratulations to you, Vaishali, and a very, very warm welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And hello, everyone.
So Vaishali is tuning in from Bombay, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes.
Excellent.
We have Ant as well.
Yes, and we've got Ant, who's coming to us all the way from South Africa. Ant Verwoerd began working in prominent architectural firms in 2012 before even graduating from the University of Cape Town in 2014. 5 years later, he founded the multidisciplinary design studio, Frankie Papas. Frankie Papas is the collective pseudonym under which clients, users, architects, engineers, landscapers, coders, and creatives collaborate on projects with a strong reverence for the future. The studio's tagline is wonderfully similar, beautifully different. It encapsulates the philosophy behind its true discovery, a group of clashing minds finding provocation and inspiration through common ideology. Ant's intention was always to keep the work of Frankie proudly rigorous, where client, site, budget, climate, and geometry can be celebrated with a well-drawn line and serious consideration. A very, very warm welcome, Ant, today and to this panel. And a little word of advice for all our audience. You have to go check out Frankie Papas's website. It is unbelievable. Just the experience of navigating through the website is incredible. And that is not a paid advertisement there. But to start off, I think the reason why we titled this panel what it is because it's very personal for Sneha and myself.
the biggest mistake you can make is I think not allowing yourself to make mistakes. That's the thing. And everything in our life, from primary school through high school, through your tertiary education, through being told you need to buy a home and take out a mortgage, all of those things are kind of this way of pushing you into less and less freedom. And if you're not very careful with your life and how you go about it, you kind of, everything errs towards a less free existence. And why I bring this up is because that it comes down to simple things like purchasing a shirt with a logo on it or a shirt without a logo on it. That's a decision between a less free life and a life where you're kind of purchasing your freedom in a weird way. And that's what I mean by creating a life that allows you to make mistakes. Because if you're constantly in this world where you don't allow yourself that very broad canvas on which you're going to make mistakes, like Bob Ross, I think I'm now rambling, but I'm going to bring it back at some point, I hope. You're going to go sign up for some corporate life because you're trading in those freedoms for kind of a safety net, for more comfort. And in essence, what you're saying is someone must please pay me so that I can be average. So at a corporate or a big company, someone's going to pay you so that you can fit in, not to pay you to be the fuck up you've always wanted to be. I mean, if you go into an interview and tell them that's what you're going to do with the money they're paying you, I think you'll be shown the door quite quickly. And that's the thing. Like, try produce your life so that you can make these mistakes. These mistakes you're going to make, those are kind of payment for a full and free life. That's my go-to thing, is to try and create this freedom. It's like this, I think there's some things in life that now I'm moving towards one of the greatest philosophers in the world, and it's Bill Watterson, the cartoonist for Calvin and Hobbes.
Yeah,
exactly. And if all the drawing work I've done in my life, all the ideas about color and light and all of these things come directly from Bill Watterson. But I think there are things that there's nothing in life that's as consistent as Calvin and Hobbes that will be true for the next 20 million years. And the one thing he says is, if your knees aren't green by the end of the day, you ought to seriously re-examine your life. And
right.
Kind of that's how, if my brain's not green by the end of the day, then, then I'm doing something wrong. Sorry, that was a big ramble, and I'm glad.
It's a great start. Yeah,
so everyone else can walk over it.
You've given us a lot to think of, but also pick from.
Yeah.
And like you say, right, there's a saying that you want to reach the gates of heaven sliding and scratched up and with bruises and scratches instead of walking in pristine and made up, right?
Yeah.
But in light of that, Anthony, why don't you tell us about what you consider would be some of your mistakes, or how you think, where do you feel that you've picked up some of these scratches along the way? So you're a mute.
I think all along. So just, this aspect of when did I realize about aspects of failure and mistakes is right from early childhood, where you realize that you are not as smart as the smartest guy in class, or you're not picked up for the next football team, right? Or you just can't wrestle the other guy down, right? And there's this pressure which comes on you, and it stays on for a very long time, right? How you perform in school and things like that, and that's constantly weighing down on you. I think we were talking some time back, right? That it weighs down to such a degree that it takes many years for you to come out of it, right? So while I'm in perfectly awe of what Ant said, huge awe, right? In context of, oh wow, that's an ideal situation to be in, where I can let myself free to such an extent that I'm falling and not afraid to fall in that sense, right? And automatically, because of that fearless attitude, I pick myself from here and there and wherever I want to. Having said that, I mean, in my case, basically, it took me a while to get out of that situation of highly competitive environment where you're constantly pegged with somebody. And in the pure definition of a mistake versus failure, failure, I think, is more societal in nature, where somebody looks down upon you because of your mistakes, right? Again, there's a very fine line between repeated mistakes, which tend to become your trait or tend to become your weaknesses, right? Again, the differentiation between what you're born with, so Sam Harris talks about this critical component of that we are all lucky to be in a better situation, like in this particular forum, right? Because we are born with certain gifts, as we put it, right? And at the same time, there are many people, as we know, are not born with those gifts, are not as well off as far as those gifts are concerned. And how do you turn this? So while he talks about that, some people like me and all of us who are born with X amount of gifts could be the DNA we're born, or the intelligence we are born with, or the capabilities which we are born with. And then you take that and you say, then you better do something with it. You move it to those gifts, right? And to your good luck. While somebody may not be as well off in context to those very gifts are concerned. But I think it's very important for those very people to be aware of those things, of what they lack, and work towards improving their life and livelihood in that sense. And I think, and thereby this aspect of, again, quoting, in context to what Sam Harris says, the aspect of ego disappears. Then what are you proud of, and what are you afraid of, or what are you putting yourself down for? None of those two basically concepts exist in that sense, and thereby ego stops to exist. But we know these are all quote unquote situations, but the reality is exactly that. But we as society, we take ourselves far away from that real fact, right? And I think that's what is challenging.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Anthony, because it starts and ends with ego, right? Whatever you choose, your choices, the mistakes that you made, the paths that you choose, it starts and ends with the ego. And I think that's the right kind of energy too when it comes to working in anything that you do. Vaishali, coming to you, on that note, considering that we've talked about being fearless and where you need to focus on your ego or let it take a back seat. Can you share a time or that moment, that pivotal mistake or that pivotal misstep that you are proud of making, and that you would like to share with maybe designers who have probably made those errors in the past, but have not really considered that as part of their proud journey? Has there been that moment for you? And
I
if you
think
can
yes.
share that moment.
Yes, many times. First of all, I agree with Ant and Johnny because, it's so much similar when you think about your mistakes and these things. For me, of course, many things happen, but I feel, you have to be free to do the mistake. And I feel that's how you create your own path, and that canvas is so huge, if you're fearless to do your mistakes. So because I come from very different background and coming from very small town, and first mistake was like because I was not aware about design and fashion. I did my graduation in science, and then I realized, oh my god, what I did, this is like 4 years I've wasted, my 4 years. But somehow, and then when you explore, when you don't have formal education in that subject, of course you learn from your mistake. And I was keep doing mistakes, and then I've decided I think I have to do everything with my rules. Even with the fashion industry, when after 10 years of working, and then I've done my study in fashion, finally post-graduation, and then masters. When I entered the fashion industry, that was like big shock for me, because I was coming from different base and background, and fashion industry is very different. So even how to present yourself, I was not aware about that. How to sell or do business. So many mistakes. It's not one, but I think that was the way for me to go ahead. And maybe I'm not following the rules, and I'm doing my things. Maybe I'm paying for that. Of course, a lot of mistakes and a lot of money you lose. I did that, and but because of that, I've gained some kind of confidence. If you're fail, you can stand up anytime. You have that kind of confidence if you do mistake and learn. So in my case, of course I don't have one, because I have done many. So step by step, yeah. So because I've worked for 10 years before doing my fashion study. So with the fabric also, I was just trying and doing my things. So wastage of fabric, of course, that was painful, because I work with weavers and I see how they make fabric by hand. So those painful things, I think I have converted into my sustainability, because when you come from a small town, you have learned already, you should not waste things, you should not waste water, or you should not, or maybe we used to get only one pair of clothes in a year.
Yeah.
So that thought was there, and I thought, okay, I don't know, but I'm wasting so much. I should do something. That's how I've learned sustainability. Maybe the word is coming now to like everyone is popping up a lot. But that's how, I've learned very important, very small, but very important things with my mistakes. And so
I think
that's the key.
Such a great example.
Very pertinent. Yeah, you've made some very pertinent points, Vaishali, and I think stronger, right? And that's something that we all have to, I guess, in some respect, remember. And we might fall, but we have to pick ourselves up and move ahead. And this is something that we touch, kind of similar sort of experiences. But I think, like, taking on from that point, I'm very curious. You did mention that you did not have any formal training, and yet you took that leap of faith and you went into fashion because that's where your passion really lied. But I'm sure you also brought a certain sense of freshness to it, right? Not kind of being, and we discussed this in the last session as well, that you're not confined by a specific type of training. So you're probably looking at things from a very different perspective. You're probably approaching things very differently. You may have made mistakes in the process, but you've probably learned from that and learned better. You've emerged stronger, which brings me to the idea of perfectionism, right? And how we so revere this concept today, and how we put people on pedestals because of them being perfect in, whether it's in their talent or in the way they are or how they present themselves. And would you like to comment on this idea of, how do we grow better, or how do we grow stronger, or where does perfection lie within this entire equation or timeline of our journeys? What do you feel about perfection and this idea that it's become like this greatest good or a goal that everyone must strive towards?
I think the perfection word for me still is not there. I think I'm still learning, and as we are discussing, like, we learn from our mistake. You keep doing mistake, and you polish yourself. I have learned that way. Like, this was one example with like leftover fabric and all. I've learned, but it's like, just you have to, because there is out of your frame, many people are there. They will say, okay, this is wrong, this is right, you have to do this, you have to do that. But I think that is very difficult to keep that focus. I want to go this way, this is my path, I want to create new path, I don't want to follow others rules. I think that takes you there, and maybe and that's how you do different things. That's how you create different things. And I think perfection is no,
we all define perfectionism differently. Maybe
differently,
Anne can weigh in on this.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't think this. I mean, it's not going to be contentious or profound to say I don't think this perfection thing exists. I mean, I think everyone's going to agree on this. It's strange to me, you know, the thing is exactly what was being said now is that, you know, this idea of taking risks, of experimenting, of testing boundaries, all these things in order to find your own way, you know, those are the bread and butter of mistakes. And, you know, the thing is, you know, those kids call that thing, those mistakes, play. And we have this bizarre notion that we're, you know, if you hear people speaking about mistakes, it's like, well, we make a mistake, then we pick ourselves up and we dust ourselves off. You know, that for me is not the way I think. I don't think that's necessarily a great way of looking at mistakes. You know, it's finding these mistakes, things are inevitable. It's just about knowing which ones to keep. That's for me. I mean, I'm looking at it from a design perspective. You know, every time I draw a line, it's the wrong line. I can guarantee you that. And I'm drawing the wrong line until I say, oh God, that's the right one. And that's what I mean by these considered lines, is that you're drawing lines and it's so frustrating to make 1,000 mistakes until you get one mistake that's the right one. You know, it's this Bob Ross notion of, you know, we don't make mistakes. We just have happy little accidents, you know, and as soft and fluffy as that sounds, it's it, right? It's like life. It's accident upon accident upon accident for however long you're going to live, you know. And there's one thing I remember him saying, and it's so beautiful. He says, you know, if you ever make a mistake, make them birds. You know, okay, now they're birds. Which, from a painting perspective, it sounds so fluffy, but it's incredibly smart. And you hope. I hope to God I'm going to make mistakes forever. You know, because it's not only that I think they're important if you want to go somewhere no one else is going, which is exactly what I hope everyone's trying to do to a certain degree, is just go your own way, you know, like Frank Sinatra wanted everyone to do, you know. But it's this idea of like mistakes make you humble. That's the thing. And achievement makes you arrogant. And
right.
And the dichotomy of that is that if you want to achieve something remarkable, you need to make the mistakes. So there's this bizarre thing of you need to be humble enough, or no, maybe you need to be arrogant enough to want to make all those mistakes. I'm not sure exactly how all of this fits in, but you can understand what I'm saying. These mistakes and achievement go hand in hand, and humility and arrogance go hand in hand. It's like two sides of the same thing. We can't speak about these mistakes as something you make and then you dust yourself off. No, because you're just dusting yourself off constantly your whole life. That's what it is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Sorry,
go ahead. I feel this way. Maybe it's, I don't know, wrong or right, but you know, when you feel like you're perfect, you know, everything is fine and you are satisfied, I think that then growth is not there, especially for creative person. You know, you can't be satisfied. Otherwise, I feel it's end of your creativity. So, we have to keep doing mistakes and we have to learn. Yeah, we have to keep learning from those mistakes. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think there's definitely that school of thought of, you know, keep doing mistakes and learn. And of course, what Anne said, you know, that, you know, with more mistakes comes humility. There's also this other, you know, just to present a comment here, and maybe I'm sharing this from personal experience. sometimes you're conditioned to, I mean, it is part of your conditioning to not make mistakes, especially when you grow up in a very strict upbringing where making mistakes is shunned. You have to choose the right path. You have to go in a certain direction. I've been raised in that kind of environment. Of course, my family is the best, the beautiful, the most beautiful and supportive in my decisions now. But back then, I grew up in a very strict household where if you made a mistake, you were punished. And even though that mistake wasn't really, that severe or that, groundbreaking or that, the earthquake happened and the house came down, nothing like that, So I think it's very hard to break out from that shell, especially if you are in a creative field. I think this is my personal perspective here. And I learned that the hard way. And I learned through education, through mentors in school, that it's absolutely okay. Through mistakes, you will learn how to see it from a different perspective. Maybe Anthony, if you want to maybe add on to this, did you feel the same way, or was it a similar kind of upbringing, or was it a different kind for you? Was it because of your upbringing that you were able to appreciate that mistakes were a part of who you are, or is it another perspective altogether? Sorry, Anthony, you're on mute. Yeah.
So taking off from the aspect of perfectionist, right?
Yeah.
While there is this whole craft of perfectionism, right? Where you make something perfect, the ideal form, right? Or the ideal building, or the ideal structure, or the ideal symbol, right? Which is perfect in every sense, and irrefutable in concept. So I think it's a double-edged sword in a lot of ways. That while we pursue this ideal situation, we need to go through this entire journey of imperfect steps, or things like that. So I think they are all resonating on the same line, but I think the conflict lies, for me at least, in the dichotomy or the opposites of the aspect of that you are commissioned normally to make that perfect symbol for your potential client, or to come out with this perfect strategy which is going to eradicate hunger, right? Or to communicate to the masses about vaccinating yourself, right? And you just, and any misstep in that, the mistake there has got catastrophic, now here as a designer, we still take the soft blow. But imagine somebody at a strategic level or a leadership level, right? Say the prime minister or a director of a large corporation. There, the impact of that falls at a very different level of losses or regrets or failure, in that sense, versus basically your self growth and your self indulgence towards finding your mojo, or finding your freedom, or finding your yourself in large degree. I think each one of us is pursuing that, and the ability to think beyond the ordinary, and then breaking through, yet basically delivering a solution, and I'm sure what Anne does in a lot of ways in context to, and I've yet to see your website, but but again, all of us basically we try and deliver an end product to a client which has got an acceptable value to it, right? In context to a fee or an arrangement which you have made with somebody, and a lot of times basically you get commissioned for the type of work you do, right? So each one of us have carved out at that particular niche, or the life process allows you to carve out that. That's also there. You get slotted into something, and that slottedness is something again which something you may accept or deny, and then again reshape yourself to find a slot which is both cohesively acceptable by you to begin with, and by society to address you in that context. So I always find it very challenging for me to while if you see our work, I mean, we have always tried and break that mold, so we have taken that risk of what if, right? And then the other aspect which I also want to bring to the table is like the aspect of humanism, that life around us is never perfect. We all know from our own life journeys, right? Yet we are pushed to produce something which is perfect, right? In that sense. So how do you make something which is humanistic, which has got the fault lies in it, right? In that sense.
Yeah.
And it is more beautiful because it has got those faults within itself, right? And I think from the so-called perfect definition of perfectionism or correctness or everything, or what's inducted from early life for us, right? Can we turn a society into an acceptable society of this so-called the unperfect being, and thereby that's perfect, in that context? Can we put that argument on board? Yeah.
I think that's
Sorry,
a
again,
very,
long run.
no,
it's
but these are
perfect.
some
Yeah.
really interesting points that we're bringing out here, because I love how you talk about the flawed, right? Or you said the fault, but it's the flaws that make each one of us unique. It's what's make each one of us different from the other person. We are not cookie cutter sort of patterns, and neither are we doing that in our respective works. Like you said, where it's required, it's done. But when we're talking about when you're talking about like personal growth, or you're talking about what you're doing as an individual, it is the differences or the differentiators that you can work on to really push things further. Which actually brings me to the idea of vulnerabilities. And we had talked about this when we all met last. And I think that is something that we would really like to address, is in terms of, we've talked about mistakes, we talk about failures, but what about vulnerabilities? There's a stark difference between a mistake and failures, or insecurities and vulnerabilities. And I'd like to ask each one of you what some of your greatest vulnerabilities are and how you deal with them, right? It's one thing to accept them and to fold them into your path. And it's another one to address them and kind of jump over them. So if any of you, and why don't we put you on the stand again?
I mean, when we talked last time, I mean, I think we were talking about like this emotional situation of a designer. Now, I mean, I think the one thing I was saying, I experienced quite severe depression, and I don't think that's rare at all in the, particularly as designers, because I think we're necessarily have these very high and very low amplitudes in order to produce the work we do. I mean, if we were like very compressed, I don't think we'd be producing this amazing work. And this depression is not a fun thing. I mean, like suicidal ideation, all of these things, it's difficult. But it's interesting that, or at least for me in thinking about it, and this is what I spend my life doing, is thinking mostly. So I'm going to be introspective every now and again, and I see this depression as kind of like a superpower of sorts. I mean, that's a silly way of seeing it maybe, but you don't get, if I don't continuously go through this, which is why I kind of speak about mistakes as this thing that it's always there. It's always dusting yourself off. And it's why I think, because that depression is with you all the time. It's not as if every now and again you need it or you have it. It's there consistently. And if you're not experiencing those things, well, then you don't develop these empathies that I think you're forced to develop if you're in your brain crying because of things you've got.
Having about learning some point of your life and of your career. Has there been that moment? Like, did you kind of overcome it in a way?
To what Sneha is saying, like Anthony mentioned, right? You would have, you know, if you look back on if you reflect back.
Sorry.
So I would say, I think I address and the same thing, like, you know, person we trust so easily, you know, really got, you know, bad experience. Nature so easily, you know, you maybe doing these mistakes also. That's how you meet good, learn so much from different people. Not even aware about like how to go to we met. So for me, I think biggest strength also. Many things because we would have done, you know, in a bad, for sure. Yes.
Yeah. So Anthony, go ahead. You have to share something.
Well, in the last been better in that context. Not anything.
Yeah.
So no.
It's the anger which you feel or the pain. Have had a tremendous life. And I think, again, because I find myself tremendously. So I would not change anything. Anything is
if I could first. How we should be grateful for what we have. That's not really married to not have, and yet be grateful for where you are right now. There have been things that were out of your control that happened. Circumstances. Regret for how you dealt with that. Now, what that would have led to. But it would be interesting.
Thought. Very deep.
To be way. I've never, but the same. If I had to have that, you know, but I don't think you get that. All the having regretted, all the comfortable, as peaceful as this, because you've and you know, there's two things. The one is may you live in interesting times. I think is important. What he speaks about, you know, had they produced Da Vinci, and for 500 years, well, the cuckoo clock. If you're wanting to create, you need that angst. For me, that is the case. You know, and look at it. The best designers, and I'm going to speak. And why I say this is because these things, you know, these huge I mean, we have huge cultural issues. Whereas what I see, but I'm talking, there is this fascination with aesthetic. It's almost as if we're after this as to this aesthetic goal. That's not for a vaccine drive or something where the serious. It's not a joke. And you produce this thing which solves where the plants or the climatic design work almost. You just get what these parameters are, the building shapes itself. Then there will be something at the end which is constraints have never been put. And if it's, and yes, it's probably into the consideration. That's my philosophy in it. Sorry, I'm taking this now.
That's
I can
all right.
see the parallel. Where a mistake can lead, which we're most known for. Full site LiDAR scan, so we had a digital model. And I had laid this building out. And because we had placed it into a position where we would have had to have demolished. And so this is our now need to be addressed. And that whole entrance, which is way better than the original entrance to result in. Initial questions is this idea of perfection, of asking that question is crazy. In our because we're part
pride in being called a perfectionist.
Of these words that, and I'm going to that word, I'm not sure where, just like beauty, this is beauty as a term, have beauty without function. That of Western no So I know I've digressed in why it's often difficult to be in my
and because some of the greatest look some of the movements, art movements, so to speak, I mean, we revere during their time. They were dismissed as a comment to say it looks like it has proven that, you know, but we keep ending up doing that. So it's like a learning of from mistakes, but
truly, and I think this stupid better.
Absolutely. I second that, and yeah.
And the way we're educated too. I mean, when we talk about you were talking, Sneha, you were talking about how you'd been educated not to make mistakes. It's such simple things of grading work with a red pen. You know, we're given 9 out of 10. What that's 9 out of 10 is saying, well, you made one mistake. Acknowledge this mistake and rectify this mistake. It's a bizarre situation. And again, I mean, I was educated in an English style school. What I mean is, you know, like a state school in England, except transported to the South African context, you know, and that's exactly how you're educated, is to toe the line and get 10 out of 10, you know. That's what you're after. It is so strange.
Also, just riding on the same thing at a mega level. So where we talk about success, where it reminds me of this guy, Mike Montero. Designers have ruined the world, right? So currently, basically, we made the perfect car, and you know, so the combustion engine, you know, and etc. And see where we have reached with that particular invention, right? And the aspect of, again, how every invention was supposedly made in good intent to perfection, and it has been misused every time and many times over in that context. So thereby, basically, each one of us, in spite of our failings or lack of everything in terms of knowledge, whereby we have verticalized the world to such a high degree of so-called experts' knowledge that one expert does not know what the other expert is contributing in that context. Somehow the engine works, and somehow the engine works to produce not the right results, right? So that's one mega mistake which is happening as the entire human race is happening, right? And that's, for me, extremely tough to digest. That where have we brought the world to, right? If you're talking about empathy or the same concept about everybody wants to do good or the greater good, and every attempt to do greater good has always resulted in something which is not as good or not to be seen in that light at all, you know. And the choices we make, the choices as individuals we make, the choices as a community we make, the choices as a nation we make, it's so self-centered in every perspective, right? And I'm just thinking again now, taking it to another level of how narrowly things are looked at, right? And And Ant, you're absolutely right. It's the way we have been inducted into life, our education system, our value systems at certain levels, right? While we revere them as culture at one level, it has its faults. The faults lies majorly in the entire construct in many ways. And as individuals, I think we are breaking through for ourselves because we need to step away from all this for our own sake. And I think a lot of individuals are doing it today, and a lot of us struggle doing it in daily lives.
Yeah, and I think.
Sorry, Vishali, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Vishali.
So
go ahead.
no, I feel like, with 100% result, we say like if no mistake, I think then it's robot, we are creating robots. If there is no chance to do mistake, I don't feel it's human then, I think human is there to do mistake and, find something very different. So as he said, like the result 10 out of 9, if is one number is less, you are doing mistake. So yeah, it's the same thing, like we are creating robots if we are not doing mistake, then
We're getting there.
yeah, we are getting there. Yes.
Elon Musk is coming very close to putting a chip in.
Yeah.
So everything starts with solving a problem at a certain level. Like what he's trying to do is put a chip into people's brains so that he can correct the mistakes of nature, right? Or the mistakes of genes, right? But that eventually will be used for a different purpose altogether. Likewise, basically, this whole vaccine against COVID, there's a whole book on that, where they talk about how they have managed to mutate the DNA and RNA to such levels where they can control everything. And there are already 2 babies born in China, and somebody has misused that to produce perfect human beings. And thereby the clonism is bound to happen. And that's another big colossal stuff which we are doing and we are moving towards. Yeah, this is moving in a different direction. I mean, in terms of how as society and as
on this, I mean, taking this idea of yours of mutation, which is interesting for me because earlier on I was speaking about your life is a series of mistakes, which I truly believe, and you're speaking about this. I mean, what I was saying was incredibly like internal, but the crazy thing is that life or evolution is a series of mistakes. Like it is literally mistake after mistake after mistake until something works, which is quite liberating in a sense that if evolution has been able to create these remarkable creatures, which I think humans are probably the least remarkable of all of them, it's liberating to understand that, to know that it's quite a right for you to make these mistakes eternally and consistently, because that is how you make remarkable things that would be impossible to design.
The aspect of mistakes in terms of evolution has always been brutal, right? So the survival of the fittest is where the mistakes have not been forgiven. In context to that, I mean, just one aspect of it. While there's so many mutations and this thing has produced something beautiful at the other end, or something sustainable, or so nature has always been something which sees things through with these trials and errors, as you may put it, and we again are in an assumption that nature will probably never self-destruct. It's always built in a constructive mode, right? I don't know that theory of what will happen in context to nature, but in context to humans, it is what we have done so far. It has been proven that it is in a self-destruct mode, right? In context. And then what I was referring to now, as you, me, and Vaishali, and all of us put together, what is your role in this context? Yeah. So your own personal struggles versus what is your role in this? Are we helpless candidates of somebody's experiments? Yeah.
I mean, if you're posing that question to me, sorry.
Go ahead.
Question to me, Anthony. because
Sure.
my answer is quite simple. Is that I think we currently I mean, I don't think it's currently, I think it's a standard human condition, is that we think we're smarter than we are. And the complexity of the world is far too great for us to even get our hands on. So when we start solving for global issues, there's no way we can comprehend all the effects down the road. That's impossible for us to understand. So I'm not interested in making a better world, because that's impossible. I think the thing is to find your corner of the world that you can have a positive effect on, and leave in a better state than you found it. But that has to be hyper local. On the scale of the world, you will make it worse. I agree with you 1,000%. No one is smart enough to be creating a better world. But do I think people are smart enough to create their community, their small little corner of the world better? 1,000%.
Absolutely, and that's what's happening and today. Smaller societies, smaller cultures, are coming together, and self-governance and self-solving of their problems in context to their local environment and conditions is what they are doing now. I don't know when it will catch speed, but it's happening.
Yeah, and the problems can be contained.
Yes.
The problems that we're going to create can be contained. Yeah. Sorry for jumping in again.
No. I think it's a fabulous conversation and fascinating. But we've got some questions that a very, very curious audience that they want to engage with you. This might be taking the conversation back a little bit to what we were talking about earlier. And we mentioned something about, and you mentioned, and Anthony, you rigorously agreed that we should keep ourselves as stupid as we can for as long as we can. One question is that how do you hire stupid people? Anthony?
For the longest time, I've been, I use the term rebel, right? So I wanted to put in terms of when you say wanted, so I said, can I put a rebel out there, because in today's world, I think if I can get a couple of rebels within my firm and dare to get some of them, I think they create extremely volatile environment. And when I mean volatile, it's about being challenged, right? And not keep making it a comfort zone. So because again, me in my role, I'm always on the top-down position, by nature. So and I need to break that for myself constantly. So for that, I mean, that's my answer. That we always need to seek people who will put you in such positions.
Great. And I think a kind of follow-up to that is from Shreya. And she says that you all talk about how it's okay to fail, but don't all these mistakes and failures affect our long-term career goals and brand reputation? Vaishali, would you like to answer that?
Yes, because I don't think so. Because if you are trying to create really something different, you are creating brand, or you are trying to create some history, you will not create with the set rules. You have to, do your mistakes and learn from that. I want to share a few experiences of my life. Sure. Because I left my home when I was 17 years old, and I come from very conservative family, and even the speaking was like really big issue for me. I was not able to form a sentence in like any language. So the lot of the complexes coming from small town. So and never thought about I will make this kind of brand, or I will do something like that. But I want to give this example. If I have tried continuously and I've learned, and without doing mistake, without speaking wrong, I think it was never possible. It was never possible for me to do things, think about the brand and working like this, and uh, coming up with your different idea. So I feel if you're afraid, doing mistake, then you have set path, and you can do what is there. And if you're free to do mistake, I think you can definitely create a unique brand. You can create a history, and yeah, that's my answer.
Okay. We have Sneha. I think you have another question.
Yeah, just lastly to wrap up, I think we're almost close to time. I know that we can go on and go towards the philosophical aspects of this. But just lastly, do you remember any time a teacher or a mentor or a role model kind of guided you or showed you the right direction and told you that it was okay to make a mistake, whether it was in school or outside? Did you have someone like that in your life?
You're asking me, Sneha?
Yeah, it's open to anyone, but Vaishali, you can start, no problem.
Yeah, no, I think always, like you said, in your house, it was really strict. I also come from that background. Even in small town school also, they say like mistake is not allowed. So it was never like that. And maybe after leaving my home, I was feeling so free. I'm free to do mistakes, and I think I was I was continuously I was doing mistakes after leaving my house. Yeah.
Nice. Lovely.
Anthony?
I'll skip that. I want to hear since there's lack of time, but add that.
Because sometimes, like Vaishali also shared, like sometimes you need that guiding light to kind of say that, it's okay. It's absolutely all right. I had that with my teachers. Like it happened to me when I actually moved from my hometown and I studied abroad. That kind of opened up my experience about, how it's okay to misstep, to realize that, okay, it's okay to not be good at something and try something different.
Yeah.
That just opened up so many opportunities for me. So I was wondering if you might have had a similar experience.
No, I think
with someone in school or outside of it.
Yes and no, and various instances of my life. But I think ideally, if somebody wants to let themselves be, it's good to have a mentor around, right? And find a mentor. So I think for me, I spent a lifelong hoping I would find. I mean, I would get a mentor. I never went out to find one, right? So I don't have quote unquote a mentor, but I have a lot of friends who I confine to. So friendship, mentorship, are these terms which help people navigate these waters. And then of course when it gets really tough, then you go to the other level of consulting somebody who can fix you, right? But I think that's where I think a lot of answers lie, because you need, in whatever condition, you need some assurances somehow. For me, I solved it by believing in myself eventually, right? And I think that's the greatest thing which can happen to people: believing in yourself and believing in your constitution of who you are and what you're made up of, right? And it takes a while to do that. And that's so if I were to talk to a younger person, I'll say, hey, find yourself early. And how can you help yourself finding early? Is finding people who can reciprocate to who you are and encourage you in context to who you are, rather than put all those rules onto your head, right? So that's what I would wish for anybody else. Yeah.
Absolutely. How aptly put, Anthony. Thank you. What about you, Anne?
Yeah, I think one of the, like Anthony's saying, I think one of the greatest things, like one of the greatest gifts you can do is surround yourself with people you admire. And it's very, I mean, humans are it's the greatest sponges possible, and you'll adopt the mannerisms and characteristics of the people around you. There's no doubt about that. So this journey is like, this life is a difficult one. We all know this. let me put it this way, there's more percentage of difficult times than easy times, at least in my experience, that has been the case. And if you think you're going to go to a company and you're going to change their culture, I don't think that's the case. You have to be super special to do that. I think more often than not, you're going to adopt the culture of the people around you. And so the only power you have in this situation is to surround yourself with the people whose ideals and whose philosophies and whose characteristics you admire. And then ultimately, you'll hopefully become more and more like these people. And I think that's one of the troubles with these social medias, is that we by hook or by crook, we're surrounded by people who actually we don't intrinsically admire who they are, what they are. They're successful financially, or whatever the case may be, or they look really good, or they got really big boobs. That's the criteria that we're surrounding ourselves with, and I don't think that's the way you produce a robust, sustainable human being. You've got to find a really beautiful community of people, and that's difficult. There's no doubt about that. But if you can get that right, it's a lot of the work done for you.
I couldn't agree more, Ant. And I think a lot of us have had similar experiences, like Sneha shared with hers. I had a similar experience when I used to do really well in school in India, and I was the top of my class, and I go to university in Canada, and reality hits, right? And things are very different. And I fell flat on my face by the end of the first year, but I had one professor who walked up to me and took me aside and had a half-an-hour chat and gave me the confidence to get up and try again. And I think what you very rightly said, we need to surround ourselves with people whom we can derive these kinds of energies from. And I think what is really important is also to realize that there are people out there. And I think, especially for younger professionals, when you don't have that experience, you're intimidated by approaching people, and you hold yourself back and you don't take that chance. And I think that's something that I have learned along the way, is to go out and have conversations, right? That's the worst that can happen, is someone's going to turn around and say, I'm sorry, but I don't have the time of day for you. But that's literally the worst that can happen. So if you do feel inspired by somebody, and if you do feel that you want to be in that space and you want to share that space with them, then it's worth going and having that chat and engaging with them in whichever way that you want. I have done this. I've gone and sat in friends' studios without saying a word, but spent day after day just sitting over there and observing what they're doing and how they're doing it, and learn tremendously from that. And I would encourage people to do that. Take that leap of faith and reach out to the people that you find inspiration from. But unfortunately, at this point, these conversations are incredible, and we really wish that we could have given 1 day per session instead of an hour per session. But Anthony is like nodding, saying, "Oh yeah, done." But we're so grateful that all of you could take our time, could share your experiences, your journeys, your perspective, and be really honest and candid about this. I think that is of great value for all of us here, for our entire audience. I have to apologize for people who are sending in their questions. We are still getting questions, but we are going to have to wrap up right now. And we are going to have to jump into the next session very quickly. But thank you so much, and Anthony and Vaishali, for being here and doing this with us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anthony and Vaishali. Thank you. Thanks so much. You can stay on if you want, and stay on and maybe join in for the next session too, because the next session is going to be, it'll be a nice culmination to this discussion as well, because it talks about living to work or working to live. So if you want to stay on and contribute to that too, that'd be amazing. Yeah.
Great. So we're going to take a very quick 2-minute break. I know that our session speakers are already here. Sarah and Sumant and Arzan, we're sorry for running late, but give us just literally 2 minutes and we will start up with our next session. Thank you all so much.
All right, see you in 2 minutes. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Progress isn't a quiet thing. It makes a lot of noise. It's music even. As India moves forward, we can hear the thuds, the bangs and the rhythms of progress. At Godrej, we hear it every day. As we make rocket parts and homes, mosquito repellents and security solutions, soaps and locks, and 100 other things. We call it the sounds of making India.
Hello.
Hey everyone, welcome back.
Hi.
Hi,
Hey
can we have our
Azan.
speakers
Hi,
on
hi, hi,
video and audio, please?
Hi.
Hello.
Hey Sarah.
Hello.
So
Hey
excited to do
Suman.
this with you guys.
Hello. Hello.
Sarah Fotheringham, are you there?
I am, but it says the host has stopped my video.
Oh, okay.
All right, we'll get that sorted.
Fix that, please.
Supreet, can you help Sarah or Safomasi, please, with the video?
Just one moment.
So
Sure.
we've got Sarah Safamasi, Sarah Sham.
Yeah.
I go by Sarah, and I think you may go by
Okay.
Sarah. It may make life easier.
Great. That helps. Okay, we're all here. Perfect. Wonderful.
Great, we can see you. Yeah.
Thank you all so much for coming in this evening. We know it's a Friday evening, but we're very, very happy to have you. Very excited to have you here. And I think this session is particularly exciting and important for both Sneha and me. Comes from a very personal space for both of us, and also is the culmination of this conference. And I would say, I think we both agree, a very pertinent and very apt sort of conclusion to the talk that we've been having. It's really interesting to see how one thing's kind of rolled into the other, and all our chats have led to the next chat. So I think we've got some of our speakers from the earlier sessions joining in, and we've encouraged them to chime in whenever they feel they would like to. But without further ado, I'm going to quickly share why we decided to do this session and why we've got this fabulous set of people with here this evening. So we titled it, Do I Live to Work or Work to Live? And this comes from many, many hours that Sneha and I have toiled respectively, of course.
Toil is a good word, yeah.
Yeah. Well, for the conference, of course, but also otherwise, right? And we've had, like, in our personal journeys, in our professional journeys, we've dealt with, as all of us have. But like I said, it came from a place of personal experience where, we've had to deal with deadlines and working through the night and not knowing where to draw the line and telling your family to, forget that you exist. If every 2 months we'd have this massive print deadline on our heads and say, okay, you know what, mom, dad, girlfriend, boyfriend, friends, whatever it is, doesn't matter what the occasion is, we are not available. The only thing we're available for is the printer and the production guy and all of that. And a lot of these things have also, they've kind of led to certain questions. We've had conversations with each other, with our peers, and we've talked about what is the significance of our work today, why we're doing the kind of work that we're doing, and where is it really leading us, right? So we defined it in a specific way, and it goes, while many have the privilege to identify their passions and find career paths within close proximity of their interests, there is the other lot, which is probably equally sized, if not larger, for whom their career is purely a means to an end, right? And the end over here being their chosen lifestyle. There's no blanket rule as to what is right or wrong. No one can say that this is the way to do it or not. There's no formula for success or economic gain or social standing or personal contentment. But there are choices, and we're always faced with choices. And those choices are defined and outlined by our unique circumstances, our unique situations, and our experiences. And so that's one of the reasons we've brought you guys here to talk about all of that from where you are and where you've been. So Sneha, if I could ask you to introduce our brilliant panelists, please.
Absolutely. Firstly, we have Khambatta. Hi, Azan. Thank you so much for joining us. So Azan, I'm not sure if many of you know, is actually an architect by profession and a sculptor by choice. He's mostly busy with commissioned works, the first one being the Mughal outside the Jewel of India at the Nehru Center in 1989, and the latest one being the 25 feet tall orb at Pune. His works are found in corporate houses, in hotels, and private collections around the world. A large part of his time he spends with imparting his craft to children from all strata of society, be it the IB schools or the NGO children from the slums and streets of Bombay. But he lives by his favorite saying, and I like this part: the impossible just takes a little longer. The impossible just takes a little longer. So welcome, Azan, and thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next, we have Sarah Fotheringham, all the way from the UK. Hi, Sarah. Nice to see you. So Sarah is one half of Safo Masi, a design studio and brand founded with her husband Maninder Singh in 2012. Storytelling is at the heart of their brand. Its journey began as a way to capture memories of their travels, with each collection inspired by a journey to a different part of the world, brought to life through original illustrated prints, designed to bring joy, color, and character into your home. Sarah studied illustration at Brighton University, UK, and prior to starting her own business, was actually an art director at advertising agency Whedon and Kennedy. Sarah and Maninder now live in the UK with the Safo Masi studio based in Delhi, home to their team of tailors who handcraft their products together with artisans across India. Sarah, welcome. And then we have our second Sarah, Sarah Sham. Hi, Sarah. Sarah is part of the 4th generation and 120-year-old SG's family. SG's Atelier, the interior design firm, was established in 2014 as an independent design practice founded on the legacy and ethos of SG's brand. She worked for 5 years at SG's, where some of the projects completed included the Ambani home, Gautam Singhania's home, and Taj downtown Dubai. Having garnered experience in high-end craftsmanship at SG's, she went on to complete a 2-year interior design degree from Rachna Sansad. And since starting her own label, her own interior design practice, she and her team have won numerous awards. SG's Atelier has been featured in more than 30 publications for their various projects. Furniture design and floor spaces aside, she is a self-proclaimed fitness enthusiast, hits the gym at every given chance. She has a deep love for all things related to plants. And if you've seen her Instagram, that is absolutely true. I think I've learned a lot about indoor plants and how to take care of them just by looking at her feed. And she has close to 50 of them at home. She has a lovely young daughter and is also a pet parent to a dog and a cat, between whom she juggles her time at home. And I know this topic is especially dear to her. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Sneha.
And lastly, we have Suman Jayakrishnan. Hi, Suman. Thank you so much for joining. We are so honored to have you. Sumant is a renowned scenographer, designer, installation artist who hails from New Delhi. He transforms spaces and creates beauty for a range of contexts around the world. He builds in elements of imagery, video mapping, calligraphy, lighting, performance, installations for projects across disciplines, whether theater, dance, art, film, interior, music festivals, fashion, and the world of events. He has been a recipient of the Charles Wallace India Trust Arts Award and has won numerous other notable recognitions around the world. Some of his most notable projects you might have definitely heard of, including Deepa Mehta's film Water for art direction, Tim Supple's multilingual play The Midsummer Night's Dream for stage and costume design, the India Art Fair, and many other festivals to boot. He has also worked extensively as a set designer in the world of Indian fashion, as a conceptualizer for music festivals such as NH7 and so many other beautiful events. So thank you so much, Sumant, for joining us. I'm going to start right off by asking you perhaps the most, I mean, I can't say it, but I can definitely quote my role model, who is John Lennon. John Lennon sung the eternal line, "Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans." What have been your prominent plans in the most recent years? So maybe we can start with Arzan. Arzan, for you, what does that line mean? Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. And what has been your most prominent plans in the most recent past?
So basically, it's a wonderful line. If I have got it printed somewhere in my studio out there.
Yeah.
So basically, like I always describe my path starting from scrap till now as something that happened very naturally. So it fits this line so wonderfully well. I could plan to do something here or there or take part in a show here and there. But I would see scrap and then I would go my natural way, start welding and do that. And whilst I'm doing that, some other inquiries would pour in and all that. So I think it's absolutely apt. And I totally live by that. You know, like people say, they see my work. Why don't you go to this country and have a show there and exhibit it there and all that, you know? And I say, everything's happening very naturally here. If someone asks me, if someone takes interest in getting me there, and it becomes a part of my natural wave, then I'll do it. But I'll never go push myself into something that is a little out of my slight working pattern, so to speak. So basically, I'm very happy with going with the flow. So yes, you may plan to do something here at the studio today, but I see something interesting and I completely change my track on that whole day and I do something else. So I think it's a wonderful thing to be able to flip from one to the other and do what makes you happy. I'll just give you an example. I had a lot of deadlines right now in terms of sculptures to be fitted. I got something that is called a rabbit style corkscrew bottle opener. It's a designer and someone had broken it completely. And he said, "Can you repair it for me?" I spent one day repairing that. It was so interesting for me to study how it worked and did that and all that. I added something which made it look like rabbit eyes also. Of course, I give it my own touch, but it just happened that day. So this is exactly what I'm saying. I plan to do something else. Something jumps in, take it in your stride and just sort of go along. It makes life more interesting that way, you know? And I completely live by that.
Absolutely, and that's so well put also. And thanks so much for sharing that. And the product, what was the name of the product that you just said?
It's basically a wine bottle opener.
It's a wine bottle.
And it's called a rabbit style wine bottle opener. It's very funky. It was broken and I just completely sort of took it apart and then put it together. It was very interesting. I spent one day on that, so I loved it, you know. So I'm just saying, you can sometimes do things which are totally out of your line of work, and I think that's what keeps you more active at the studio, to jump into anything that you like.
Yeah.
The better, I mean, the more spontaneous it is, the better it is sometimes, you know. So
Right.
totally live by that line completely.
Right. Yeah. Sarah, can I address you as Sarah S and Sarah F for the purpose of this conversation, if that's okay?
Yeah.
Coming to you, Sarah F, how did life happen to you while you were busy making other plans? Because yeah, your journey, your life, your career has had an interesting trajectory. Do you want to share that? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I really made any plans. I think I did like just go along with sort of whatever was happening. So yeah, it sort of started off as when I graduated in illustration, I was ending up working in London, doing all sorts of bits and pieces. I didn't really have anything tying me to London at that time. I'd done placements in advertising, which I enjoyed, but there wasn't like a full-time job for me there at that time. Although my parents were like, when are you going to get a job? When are you going to get a job? That was sort of their thing for me. And yeah, I was sort of doing freelance things, working in a pub, bits and pieces. And I ended up coming to India traveling. That's not so random because my dad worked here when I was younger. He worked for the British Council, so he was posted in Delhi for 4 years. So I came back in 2010, which was the first time I'd been in India since 1997. And it was amazing. I spent like 4 months traveling around all over the country, and I just spent the time drawing. I was by myself, and sorry, I get really nervous when I'm on Zoom for some reason.
No, you're doing great. Go ahead.
I'm not good at these things. Yeah, and I was just by myself drawing and kind of developing ideas for prints and just enjoying my time. But I also met some people in Delhi from Wyden and Kennedy who I'd worked at in London. I'd done a small sort of internship with them in London. And so I met them briefly. It was great, but thought nothing of it. And then a couple of months later, I got an email offering me a job with them. And that was like, whoa, this is amazing. Like, this is a great job. Like, it's a great company. It's really exciting. I could be in India. And I was like, okay, well, I've got nothing in London. I'll do this. And yeah, so I worked in advertising for nearly 4 years, and I had a great time. It was really interesting. I learned so much. Like, a lot of the time I was like, why am I here? What am I doing? Like, how did I even get the job? And then at the same time, I met my husband on the side, like, well, now my husband, yeah, not on the side, but like I met my husband and we started working together in that, like, I had all of these drawings from my travels and I wanted to spend time with him, but also my job was really full on. It was like, advertising isn't a very part-time job. So I was like, well, you know, like, why don't you help me sort of with what I want to sort of do here? And he would have sort of helped me with my drawings, and I was working and turning them into screen prints, and he was working in fashion at the time. So I had kind of connections to designers, and together slowly we started experimenting, turning my drawings into patterns and prints for fabrics. And I don't even know how it happened. It's honestly just such an organic, like, I can't pinpoint like we're going to start this business and this is going to be what it is. It just sort of developed, and slowly it was funded by my job for like the beginning, like 2-3 years, and then we managed to sort of let go of that, and then this, and then I guess the most prominent plans in the last few years has been the move to the UK. So that was sort of a conscious decision, I guess, in terms of life, to want to be here closer to my family for a bit, having lived in India for nearly 9-10 years. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
Here
so
I am.
so you were actually juggling your passion, which is now your brand, and your full-time job at the same time, which must have been quite challenging.
We didn't have any days off. It was like, I remember one day, like we had one like long weekend in Manali, like over like 2 years, and like every weekend, every evening it was working, and that was it. But yeah, it was good.
That's quite something. So what about you, Sarah? You know, I'm sure you must resonate with that iconic line. And you've had an interesting trajectory too. Didn't you also juggle a TV stint and then get into your family business? Can you tell us a little bit about that and what it is now for you?
Yeah, so I did every job imaginable from working as a barista in a coffee shop to working at Vogue in events to working at a hedge fund to working as an art consultant
Wow.
to
Yeah.
working in television as a news anchor I mean, I've literally done everything imaginable because I basically hated every job I ever had. And I always felt like I didn't know what I wanted to do until I kind of stumbled into this. And of course, when you read that bio out, it seems very picture perfect that everything really fell into place, that, you know, so and so and so. But it was actually the opposite. I hated working in everything else. I think that's what really cemented my views on this topic about work-life balance, because I had so many jobs where there was no work-life balance. And I worked for so many bosses that were honestly so shit and didn't give me any time off to have a personal life. So I realized when I started up my own business, whether it was just me plus one person or, you know, whatever we scaled up to now, that I was never gonna live that lifestyle or repeat any of those same mistakes that made me hate waking up every single morning, or made me feel like there was just this pressure cooker that was about to explode if I didn't show up to work. So I've actually got a very radical view on work-life balance, even through all of us scaling up our entire business and doing all of that. We always took weekends off. Everyone always took days off. Work always ended at 7 p.m. Even if we had the world's biggest presentation the next day, there was always a cutoff time so that you can go to sleep, wake up fresh the next morning, and then get back into it. And, you know, especially from the design community, because there are a lot of creative people in our space, as you can see from this panel here, people feel like they're at their creative best sometimes at midnight, sometimes at 2 a.m. And so it becomes very difficult to work in those kinds of setups as it was for me. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's just what my perspective was, and maybe more a knee-jerk reaction to me having had lots of bad experiences in the past of feeling like I had no life. And life is not about work. Life is about taking a beautiful holiday with your family, or even just sitting silently for 2 hours watching the ocean or meditating. That's what life is. Life is not your work.
That's really interesting, Sarah, how you put it. And I think what's fascinating about this panel is that we've got very distinct journeys over here. And Sumant, I want to bring you in. And having known you for quite a few years now, I can see that very confidently say that you are probably the polar opposite of what Sarah Sham is, right? And would love to hear your bit and your take, because I have seen him work, set up an event, and then party through that event till the next morning, take a flight and start work again, right? So that's the other, he's like the Duracell bunny. How it happens, no one knows. But Suman, tell us.
But Suman, I do want to say one thing. I've never seen a Zoom backdrop better than what you have on. It is
That is true.
The best
Halo.
I have seen, best Zoom backdrop I've seen.
You're on mute.
Compositionally. Suman, you're on mute though.
There's like a halo radiating from your head, and it is just so slick. It's unreal. I just love it.
This is actually my work table, and I've just moved slightly to, you know, so I keep moving left and right because, you know, this is part of the OCD that I think all of us share.
Amazing.
Just how you apply the OCD to different spaces. I mean, one of the things I've learned recently is that I'm grateful for the fact that I expend energy and it's used to shift emotions, memories, people around me. I've never had an ego. I think about what I do. You know, when I was working with performance and art and I started doing fashion, friends would say, don't mention the F word. You know, it didn't matter. I started doing weddings because all of it was another forum, another space, another niche, because I'm not competitive. I've never been. If there's any kind of competition, it's against myself. And the struggle, and I call it a struggle, is to stay authentic. You know, I've had crashes in the past, and it's always happened when I've tried to do something else or shift the core of who I am, because it's been imprinted at an earlier time, so you think you're maybe not enough. So that, you know, so one of the things I've learned actually that, and this comes from Marianne Williamson's poem, Our Deepest Fear, that it is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us most. and understanding that has been quite a journey and still continues to be. So, in my head, when I talk to people, my phrase is still, when I grow up. I mean, that's a bit absurd at one level, but it's entirely true. So starting even through design school and college, I think I still carry that with me, that sense of wonder about things around me and that interest in the outside world and people. And so locating from design school, what would I have liked to have been originally? A dancer. But later post-design, when I went into dance and stuff, it wasn't enough, having been in so many different worlds, one needed spaces where you could meld all of this together. No one world was enough. If someone asked me, what's your favorite project? I said, I think it's yet to come. And many of them are favorite for different reasons. They're not comparative. You're a particular person at that point of time. And, to understand that one of the key things about me, which allows me to do this, is I'm non-transactional. So in essence, I don't expect too much of people or other things, because like I was just listening into the last bit of conversation of the last session, and the fact that you find people you resonate with. And one of the things I understand quite clearly is there are certain people, certain energies that you make them shine, they make you shine. And there isn't a logic to it. And I'm just grateful for as many people like that I meet along the way. And stay vulnerable and sensitive and not, and that I work at. Because as you grow, as it's not about age, it's about how many times you keep doing something until it becomes a pattern that you can't shift. So that's a journey that I look at. So from moving from design into exhibition into performance for many years, and like you, Sarah, there's very little I haven't done over the years. I've acted, performed, I've been in front of the stage, behind the stage, I've worked in odd spaces in the years abroad. And it all feeds into who one is. And so if I look at what am I now, I wouldn't say I'm a designer or an artist. I think the three things I was just writing down because, one is I realize I'm a teacher. I started a studio 21 years ago, despite, it was something I did despite myself because I'm essentially a nomad floating around. So, I had to really work at that. The second thing is that I'm a healer. And I didn't understand that about people around me and the people who come in and who leave. And the third thing is that in the kind of work I do in space, I'm a kind of a channel. And that's how at many points of time, one is way more than what is of just one's talents and skills, because you resonate with other people, you gather energies and you allow it to flow through you. So you're much more than your own. And I think every artist and performer will understand that, because those are the moments of things that allow us to believe in magic. And I do believe in magic, and magic, but it's when you allow your channels to be free, when you're not blocking yourself or you get so obsessed with one thing that becomes a whirlpool. So to get back to your question, Sneha, or your statement, I love that phrase. I've never really planned, and it's been a series of little choices. I don't think there's anything I can call one big choice. It's really been one little choice, and then you look back and say, my God, how did I get here? So, and I would say it's been done, and I'm grateful for that organicity of how that came through.
How well put, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think just taking off from what Suman said, the series of little choices, even though it was not part of the larger plan anyway, there is still a construct or an ideal of ambition versus success. Ambition versus success. For you personally, are they different or are they similar now? Maybe Sarah F., if you want to comment on that. Is your idea or construct of ambition versus success, are they both the same right now or are they different?
I don't know. I think I'm so conflicted because on one hand, I am ambitious. There are things I want to do. On the other hand, I also really want like a stress-free life, and just like the idea of success for me is just to be happy in what I'm doing, fulfilled in what I'm doing, be able to sustain my life like financially, and just time wise, to be able to have time to spend with people. And that's all I want to do. And then how does that fit with also being ambitious in terms of like my work? And it's a kind of conflict, because it's like, on one hand, you can do both, I think, but
yeah,
I guess it depends on what your ambitions are. And I think my ambitions now are not what they were, maybe. Like, I think what I used to think I wanted, I don't actually really want so much anymore. Like,
I know what you mean.
I don't want to have like 20 shops, for example. Do you know what I mean? I'd love one maybe, but I don't want to be a manager. I just want to have a nice, peaceful life. I don't know if you can do that with your own business really fully, because you never really fully switch off. So that's also a conflict. But
I couldn't agree more, because that will always be a conflict, right? And maybe you might also be at a stage right now because you have managed to grow this known brand, that is known for a certain signature, a certain style. And maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that idea wasn't even there to begin with, right? So you have kind of worked towards that adaptation. You kind of, through that adaptation, you have adapted your definition of success or ambition. So Razan, in your case, has it been a similar kind of thing for you? Has it been a conflict for you? Or have you learned how to kind of make peace with that? Ambition and success aren't really the same or different.
I don't think they're really the same. It's like this very natural path that you follow. Everything comes in at the time that it's supposed to come in. So like Sarah mentioned, it's a wonderful thing. Just keep on working. And if you can be happy with the kind of work you're doing, then it's phenomenal. It's not the quantity of work. It's absolutely nothing to do with the quantity of work or the amount of sculptures that I can see outside, or my studio is filled with orders and I'm busy and all that. I'm equally happy when I'm busy. I'm equally happy when I'm not, because at that time I get to experiment. I get to do other things which I don't get to do when I'm sitting on the work itself. So there is, like I said, there is no end point in mind. I would love to just keep working as the work keeps on coming in. I would love to keep experimenting. That makes me happy. And yes, the control that an artist has over his own time is phenomenal. So it's like sometimes you can literally take off and not step in at the studio at the last moment and just go out and sit somewhere or have lunch somewhere outside. Now that is possible only if you're doing your own thing, and if you have the confidence that the overall what you're doing fits in that bubble is wonderful. You can't go to lunch every day and you can't work every day. So that I think just managing everything and making it into a very nice, happy bubble is what I aim at. And I think I can manage very well over there. My time, everything is well regulated to fit both in equally. So I'm quite happy that way.
I think, Irzan, you're using the word happy, and I think that's quite a critical term to bring in at this point. And I also feel that, what we find happiness in, or how we derive happiness, is something that evolves with time, right? It changes over time. Sarah, maybe you want to shed some light on this. Like, what makes you happy, or what does happiness mean to you? And has it changed over time?
I think I've just become more aware of my needs in life. And I think that while all of us are obviously ambitious to do the best that we can for ourselves, happiness is paramount. If I wake up and I have a client that's paying me $1 trillion, I feel unhappy talking to him, I will walk off the project. I have no interest in doing it with someone who makes me unhappy. So that's the difference between happiness and ambition. And I've reached that point where if I feel like even someone asks me 3 extra questions which are making me uncomfortable, I know before I start the interaction with the client, hey, you know what, your energy is not for me. You please go elsewhere, and I will be here with the energy of people that align with me, that get my vibe and give me the creative freedom to do my best work. That is happiness, that I get to do a job that I love every day. I have a balance in my life. I mean, balance is also relative, right? Like what that is for everyone.
Sure, yeah.
And I think just happiness is knowing that I cannot allow certain energies to enter my sphere, blocking all of those out. and sticking to what makes me want to wake up in the morning and get out of bed and really go for it. That's literally, so if something makes me happy, whether it is work related or personal life related, I have just realized in life that I will do it. If I want to eat a full cake, I will do it. If I want to spend 3 hours at the gym, I will do it. I am, that's just it, right? Like, why? I just don't think that there's any reason for me to do anything that makes me unhappy. So that's just it. And even if there's something that my ambition wants that makes me feel unhappy, I will not do it. Happiness is paramount to me in my life.
Sumant, you seem to agree with what Sarah is saying, but I do also want to, just put out there is that the set of us today that are sitting over here and talking about this, we are privileged and we've all come to a point where we can very distinctly say that, okay, you know what, if this doesn't make me happy, I'm not going to do it. But you've probably come to that point.
No, but I
disagree, right?
I disagree with that, because when you're not at that point and you're having to take on the shit work with the shit clients because you need the money, that's when you're actually the most unhappy.
Yeah.
Because you're just stuck in this cycle. So I still have a young firm. It's only 7 years old. I have a child, expenses, all of this stuff. So it's not like I'm, coasting through life at this point, and that it's easy for me to turn down any kind of work. But I feel like it is an attitude shift. And I actually wish I had done this earlier when I wasn't in this position, that I had the smartness to say, hey, I don't need to do anything that makes me unhappy. What's the worst that's going to happen? You don't earn a few thousand rupees, but your happiness has to be more paramount than money. Money cannot define happiness. And that's where I'm coming from. So I disagree that because we have money or whatever at this point that we have the luxury, but that's not true. It should not control your happiness. That's when the problems start. At least that's my opinion.
Sumant, do you want to weigh in?
Yes, of course. Firstly, I do agree with Sarah that if I think back, all the, from being, I really had different avatars and still do. And switching from one to the other, yes, it's been organic, but it's also been fairly heartfelt and easy because it's happened in a flow. So I think all of us have projects that you're unhappy with and the energies are not great, but some of those are leaps of faith that one has taken to test yourself, to see this is unfamiliar ground. Let me test it and see, how do I feel? Until I do, I'm not going to know. So you have to learn by testing it. So I would say my difficult spaces have been part of the journey of understanding what I can work with. Otherwise you don't know. I have another take on the word happiness. For the last little bit of time, I've just been saying that it's a word that needs to be abolished, banished. It's aspirational, and it's a bit like a fairy tale, the happily ever after, really. So I mean, what I understand of myself is that there is this core, the center that floats through things, and there are moments of joy that spark and there's feeling, and then there's moments of coldness or pain or whatever it is, but that core kind of learns to float and do things and go along the way, so that's why I think the word happiness belongs to the fairy tale vocabulary of Disney in that sense. Because, what I'm grateful for also is that all of that I've done is a world that is ephemeral. I create, I construct, I destroy. It's a very quick cycle, and that's been part of my inherent nature always. It's been very easy for me to let go of things at one level. I don't get attached to it, I only understand it now in hindsight, or I'm understanding it now in hindsight. So when you talk about ambition and success at a younger age, I'd say yes. When I was just starting out, it's like, fuck the world. I mean, excuse my language. I will be the best at what I do. So it wasn't about money. It wasn't about ambition. It's just getting very good and fine-tuning a craft. I didn't even know what the craft was because, I wasn't following any niche of this is what it is. A set designer didn't exist. A scenographer doesn't exist. So I've been lucky that these are niches that just kind of flowed from one to the other. So I've been around very often to be the first to be trying something out. Yeah? And because there was no preempted vision of what it was meant to be, it was anything you made it out to be. And if you believe in magic, you can do a lot. So I think the one thing that I'm clear about is that there's a mission, and the clarity of the is what I'm trying to gather as I go along. So therefore, the ambition in an earlier time was I must have access to everything. I mustn't feel that I don't have access to the best, whether it's people, talents, education, experience, to see the museums I want, to travel to the cities that have been put up in my head, to live in France for a while, to live in the UK for a while, to live the life of an artist in New York for a while. These are all things, and then you find ways to manifest them. And I think I was lucky in my 20s, at that point of time, that I found a way to manifest it, because my parents are great people, but this was not their zone. They were not going to be able to fund any of this. And I was lucky that I was good at what I did. So I was able to find the ways. And that finding a solution or a way or a route to get to what it is only happens when you're clear. Now, the clarity is not about ambition and success, because those are ends that come along the way, and at least in my zone. So I don't know if I've made much sense here, but yeah, that's my perspective on the mission, which I think is a lifelong one, which is an externalization of energy. In a sense, it's not about money or power or fame. It's about yes, there's an issue with boundaries, because I'm a giver, and the intent is also that how far and how much more can I give. That's the aim, that reach of being able to give more and more and more. It's not about less and less and less, because along the way, the comeback and the nourishment and resource happens. That fine line between how far energy comes back in and finding that boundary is what it's still work in progress, because that's where you do it yourself. Right. So my testing is how much can you get and how much can you take, and what is that line where you it's more like looking at the skeleton of existence rather than the immediate little points of of fulfillment, of gratification, because those come and they go. Usually I finish a big project, the next thing that is a huge downer. So then you're looking for the next thing to fill that void. So
yeah. So for you, Suman, success equals fulfillment, or is success more than that? Does it have to equal fulfillment for you? And this question is open to everyone else. Does it always have to equal fulfillment, or does it need to be more than that?
Success, I think, is a challenge taken on and engaged with. And you are your worst critic. And, and I'm brutally honest with myself most of the time. Though also, when you're in the creative space, you're also terribly self-delusional. So it comes with the territory. So I think the success is taking on a leap of faith and finding a way to negotiate it, right? So that it comes to an end, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise success also has connotations of the affirmation or, adulation that other people will give you to make you feel validated. But
right.
In the end, that validity actually is within yourself. You have that space in you, and looking at it and finding how that works, I think, is an individual journey. We all have different patterns.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Azan? What does it mean for you? I mean, is it fulfillment? Is it validation? At this point, what is it?
I don't think it's validation. No, I think it's fulfillment, and it changes from time to time. Like Suman said, sometimes you're happy with doing only little. Sometimes you need to do more to feel fulfilled, and it's not guided. It just comes and goes as you're working, because you're in one point of time you're dealing with so many things that you cannot set a boundary for fulfillment or end goals so powerfully. So I think it all flows in and out, and it forms a wonderful sort of I keep on calling it bubble. It's a nice little cocoon that you made for yourself, full of fulfillment, hopes, happiness, achievements, and all that, which just sort of goes along as in the creative process, and it keeps on changing. Yeah. That proportion keeps on changing,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Speaking of, I think we've covered a little bit about, I think we started talking about, you need to make yourself happy, which Sarah S. Poignantly pointed out, towards, validation and fulfillment and our own self-definition of success. But I wanted to understand from you, where does discipline fit into all of this? And how does discipline fit into all of this? Maybe Sarah S., you can, share your thoughts here. What is your concept of or construct of discipline here? And how does it equate to, a routine, or again, is it something more for you?
I think that really depends from person to person. Like I have a lot of people in my life who find routine really, really dull and boring, and it overwhelms them. And if they have to do the same thing every day, they would rather just die than do that exact same thing on repeat. But for me, I'm a creature of habit. So I remember when I was growing up, I literally ate the same meal for like 4 years, same breakfast, same lunch, and same dinner. Yeah, and even if there was like biryani or tandoori chicken or whatever it is cooked, I only wanted to eat that specific meal. So, I mean, it's safe to say I drove my
If I had biryani every day of the year, I would be a happy child. And
no, so I would go out, I would go anywhere, but so I'm a creature of habit. So my life is very disciplined. I sleep at a fixed time. I wake at a fixed time. I have everything because that's what gives me peace of mind to know that everything is in its little compartment. But I know for a lot of people, like my dad, for instance, he likes everything to just flow. He's like this really creative energy and soul. If I tell him that 9 p.m. is a submission deadline or of whatever, we're supposed to write an email, he'll probably finish it by like 8:59. For me, it'll be like 8 a.m. by 8:05. I have typed the email and it is sent, and it is like 3 different multiple reminders of follow-up. I'm like quite a type A personality. So that's what makes me feel like I've got my shit together. But I guess that's where discipline comes in for me. Like I have to wake up at the same time every morning. If I go out late one night, I actually get irritated if I'm not able to wake up in the morning and do my morning rituals and like my full routine. So my friends have been calling me this like cranky old lady for years now, because that's basically what I am. I'm just like this very cranky old lady, and I just want to like do my own routine in my own space, and I don't really venture out.
Yeah, Sarah, you're speaking my language right now, because I'm a creature of habit too, and I think this comes from and I think those who might have been listening on the previous session, I come from a very strict family household. So discipline was essentially the norm. You woke up at a certain time, you ate in a certain way, you dressed in a certain way. But I try to kind of make that my own, and kind of create like a and I don't mind being labeled the cool nerd, or maybe the cool is of course a derivative for me, but not maybe for people who know me. But yeah, I think discipline can be adapted as a cool construct. Whether it's making your life easier or making or being empathetic in a way, making the lives of other people around you who need to get the work going, their lives easier too. So I wanted to, Azan, Suman, Sarah F, do you have anything, what is your point of view here in terms of discipline being an interesting construct in your life and in your career?
I'm going to jump in here, Sneha, and
yes,
then
Pranali, go ahead.
Encourage people to take the other side as well, because I'm the opposite, right? My parents have been trying very hard to tell me to get up early in the morning and get disciplined and set a routine and all that. I just cannot. I wake up, I set the alarm every morning, I snooze it, I wake up when I want to wake up, but I'm also, I sleep when I want to sleep, right? But at the same time, I get my work done. So if there is a deadline, I will meet my deadline. How I meet it is a completely different.
But there's also this Indian parent.
So it's interesting to see that
early, and that's what makes you a good girl, which is
no,
but it's not about the good girl. It's about it's about setting a routine for yourself and figuring out what that routine is, right? Like
but there is that, like oh, but she wakes up at 11 o'clock. How does she get anything done?
I used to be the opposite. Like I used to be the only person in studio through my architectural education, because I used to work through the night. So I wanted the studio to myself. Otherwise, there'd be 75 people over there creating a ruckus. So I used to work through the night and I'd sleep during the day. But that's just the routine that I kind of developed for myself. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this up, is that when we talk about discipline, it's not necessarily a sort of like stereotypical, set yourself in a routine sort of discipline. It's how you define discipline in your own way. And I'd be curious to see how the others have also defined that discipline and how you manage to get your own work done. Because Arzan, you had mentioned that you're very you stick to the clock, right?
So basically, I mean, I'm from my parents were not at all strict. They didn't tell me when to wake up, when to sleep, what to study, nothing. I was given up on, okay, completely. I was a terrible kid. So to me, I think I myself have formed a sort of a routine. So I generally wake up at 8, okay. I'm at the studio at 9. The couple of past days, I had to do a lot of designing for other projects and all that. And just like you mentioned, I like to come in here before the workers came. So I would come here at about 7:38. So I would get that 1 hour of complete silence without having to go out on the floor and do the actual welding and stuff like that. So that gave me that time. But for ages, ever since I had started work, and exactly like Sarah has said, it's nothing to do with the money as to how much you work and what you attain for. Even at that time, I used to choose my clients. Even at that time, I used to stop work at 5. 5 o'clock is my stopping work deadline. To hell with everything. Of course, exceptions are there. If I have a show and I have to work overnight, or if there's some fitting which only can be done in the night. You know, sometimes in Mumbai, you get permission to put sculptures only in the night because it involves trucks and cranes and all that. So, I mean, barring that, I have stopped work at 5, and then either I'm walking, I'm doing my yoga, I'm in the gym, or I'm just listening to my music or whatever. But that time is very essential to me. And if, for example, if I tell someone that at 6 o'clock I'm going to walk, I treat it as an appointment. To me, it is as important as going to a client's place. And I am over punctual. So my wife keeps on complaining I've swallowed a clock when I was young. So I'm so particular about timing. I'm so particular about time. I make everyone around mad, you know, completely crazy. Like if I tell someone I'm leaving from home, stay on the corner of the road at 10:40. I'm going to pick this packet up from you and go. If I stand there and if no one's coming, I lose my cool a little. You know, so I think that discipline, no one taught me. I think it's just, I feel that if I have that, then I can do the other crazy things better. If I regulate this, then within my time that I've got, I can do whatever I want, you know. So majorly I segregate my time, and then within that I go crazy, you know.
Totally
That's
resonate, Tarzan. Totally resonate.
Agree with everything.
I think,
Sarah,
I
how
think
about
one of the things that I like about working for myself is that flexibility with my time to be able to work when I feel like, well, not when I feel like working, because there are many, like all the time you have to work when you don't feel like working, like a lot of time. But you know, if at the weekend I like feel like doing some designs because the week just hasn't come to me, you know, then I can draw at the weekend. You know, like if I want to, like, you know, do some other things during the week, then I can do that. I appreciate that flexibility. So I don't have the same kind of discipline in terms of when I start and when I stop, and I'm definitely not a morning person. But I do have like some kind of routines in that, like I'm really organized. So I like to have like the night before, I like write a list of what I need to do the next day, and I have those kind of routines, and I like to like make my space all tidy and, you know, like do that kind of shutdown routine, so then I can feel like I start fresh. But then, yeah, I don't have such a sort of rigid timing thing, but maybe I should. It's one of those things where you feel like people are telling you like work all the time, but then they're also telling you, you know, self-care, take time off. It's just like, it's quite a confusing time these days, I think, of like,
especially now,
so
right?
find your own balance.
With the whole pandemic, and I think a lot of people are struggling with this idea of where do you draw the line, right? Because people are not waking up, going to work, coming back from work, and then bringing the day to an end. A lot of times they wake up, they get to work in the next room, and they continue to work, and they lose track of time. And it's interesting because a lot of people are complaining about it. A lot of people are not being able to function, but a lot of other people feel that they're being like overtly efficient with what they're doing. And Suman, I want to bring in your perspective over here, because you've, you know, I mean, there's a lot of fluidity in the way you work, and a lot of, and just the nature of your work also facilitates that sort of integration of your professional and personal life, your social life, everything kind of like merges one into the other very often, not always perhaps. How do you deal with that? And where do you find your routine or your discipline? How do you define your discipline?
Like Sarah, you know, I'm an obsessive list maker. And because there's so many different kinds of projects at a point of time, which have different rhythms, you know, and it's really about rhythm that we're all talking right now. And what is your personal rhythm? That's kind of sync of that flow, you know. So for me, it's not so much about time, because I can multitask. in crazy ways. I can do multiple things at a time. But when I'm flowing, and otherwise I can be very slow at other moments. I've been for long periods of time in crazy schedules of great discipline, where you're up at 3 in the morning, you're leaving by 3:45, setting up, for a film or something else. So I'm quite a chameleon there. I can move rhythms, and it's almost like you perform in a different way in different spaces, and I enjoy that. So the word discipline for me is really associated with my father, which is things that get done. You walk this much, you eat this much. They're staying with me right now, and it's taken me years to diffuse the triggers that he would set off on me. And but it's lovely now because actually I function because I have his energy, I have his zest, I have his excitement about things, and it's nice to recognize those also, but also to understand the different spaces and be mutually respectful, because otherwise you can be beaten upon, like Sarah was saying, not little old lady. Let that go. You're beating yourself up there. It's kind of making yourself feel bad. Don't.
No, I love being home alone. There's no better feeling. Just being home alone is like an ideal situation. In fact, when my husband doesn't travel, I'm just like, please, can you just go travel somewhere, make some work? I just want to be home alone and go to sleep early and just watch my TV in bed alone.
I have a thought about this for you, but I think this is a separate conversation you and I have, because I recognize it perfectly. I can give you a diagnosis and the solution. No, the first time we were chatting the other day with Arzan, and he was talking about his schedule, and I admire it, and he's found it on his own. It's his, so I think really the only thing you have to do is what is your own rhythm that you find, and not let yourself feel bad that it's not someone else's, or that you're not enough, or that it's not okay. And I'm grateful that I have this huge flexibility. I'm really like this amorphous thing that can shift, change, and become things. And I think it's part of the reason I can do the kind of work I do. If I wasn't this kind of person, I wouldn't be able to do it. So, I can start watching movies during the lockdown. I'd start today morning. I'd go on the whole day, whole night, whole day into late night tomorrow, and feel it's perfectly fine. Yet when I work, I'm also like that. And I've learned now to treasure it. The fact that I have these abilities to stretch, to push, to test oneself. And it's not any kind of self-destruct. I mean, yes, it is self-destruct if we talk about it, not enough sleep and all of that. But also it's, it's being in the moment completely. So
right.
Each is home, really.
I think on that note, there are some audience questions coming in. So I'm just going to share one. And this is pretty apt since Suman just mentioned that he's able to go from day to night, like round the clock almost. So Tanya Goel asks, how do you just take a break and take time for yourself between your work? Some people think it is non-responsible or irresponsible behavior. So what are your thoughts here? Maybe we can start with, Azan is shaking his head already. So
no, absolutely not. As long as you fulfill the client's deadline, which I'm very strict about. If I tell the client 25th, let's say December, I'm going to give you that sculpture, whatever I do in between is nobody's business. As long as that sculpture reaches there, the best, whatever I do always, and I'm very, very strict about the quality and everything. I think in between, if I take a break, it's perfectly okay. So I'll tell you about this.
As long as the commitment is honored. Yeah.
As long as you're committed, correct. And I keep telling people, I'll give you this idea. It's very funny. 2002, 2003, suddenly Bombay Times started coming to art openings and taking photographs of artists. They never used to do that. Suddenly we found ourselves on the page 3 pages. Suddenly, the art events and all that. And we were wondering why this sudden change happened, And then our Thobras kept on coming in papers here, there, now and then in page 3. And then the general view of the public is, when do you work? You're always outside. You're always partying. So I used to keep on telling the papers, I said, why don't you take photographs of us between 9 and 5 in the morning so that people know as to how much work we do, So it's
Wow.
I think in between that, what I do after work, whether I take off mid-work and go to Palladium and take a walk, there is nobody's business. It's completely my own way of functioning. As long as that piece reaches in time perfect, absolutely okay. No one can say anything.
Sarah, if you were talking about this, when you were saying that, like when you were just starting out, the only holiday that you took off was that one weekend in Manali. Now, how do you ensure that you prioritize time for yourself, for your loved ones, for your family, and for you, especially if you're like Sarah S, who likes to spend time at home?
I think we're really bad at it, to be honest. Like, and I think it's something we're still working on. I think the hard thing as well is because our whole premise of our kind of work is we tell the stories of our travels. So then it's like whenever you go somewhere, it's like, oh, like what could this be? What could that be? And it's just like, when does it end? Which sounds like hugely idealistic and whatever, but it's like not really, in the sense of when you want to like actually have a break. So yeah, I think I'm still working on it, but I don't think it's a bad thing to do at all. I think it's a very good thing to do, and I think it's something everyone has to do to recharge and to sort of like avoid burnout and just getting completely exhausted. So it's a good thing to do, and I need to get better at it.
I wanted to say something about this, which is that people glorify working long hours, and as a culture, especially with design studios, it's like I was working all night, and it becomes almost the status symbol of how hardworking you are and how much work you are doing, and everyone brags and puts on social media, oh my God, I'm so tired and I'm doing so much. And we've started subscribing to this culture where we're glorifying no sleep, no social life, no personal life. And that's really deadly and dangerous. So I post a lot of my life on my social media. Most of it is just me doing things that I enjoy doing. And some of it, of course, is work related. But even when I meet my clients for the first time, I tell them from the start, my personal life is the most important thing to me. Please do not message me after 7 p.m. or before 10 a.m. I will not respond to your messages. I stop work Friday at 6 p.m. If you message me, I will not reply to you. I will not answer the call. My personal life is the most important thing to me. If anything comes up with my kid, anyone wants to take a trip, I will be gone. So it is my right to do whatever the hell I feel like doing with my life. And that's what you're signing up for. You should know that from the beginning. And then no further questions get asked beyond that, because I am very happy about the fact that I don't overwork myself, or at least try not to. And I think we need to stop glorifying seeming unprofessional because you're taking days off. That's bullshit. I mean, everyone takes time off to recoup, and you can't be a creative person if you don't take to recoup. You're just like a zombie going through everything.
Yes.
Literally not knowing what you're doing because your brain is not refreshed.
Correct.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
We get a lot of feedback from people that work in our studio saying, or in my previous job, we never got home from office before 10:30 in the night. And I said, so what would you do? And they said, we actually didn't finish any of our drawings because our productivity was so low, because we were so overworked and so low on sleep that all we wanted to do was just make sure that the boss left, and then we would just leave. So we would finish one drawing over like 10-12 hours, which we could have finished in 2 hours. So it's counterproductive to not take the time off. In fact, it's better to take the holiday and then be more productive when you come back.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree, Sarah. And I think, I mean, speaking from someone who's been in the media industry too, and Renani would, of course, relate here, that this culture needs to be, the culture of long working hours needs to come to an end. Really needs to come to an end, and it needs to start from the people who are responsible for heralding that culture, especially. And I see that even today, and especially during the pandemic, where while certain media houses did try to tweak it, there were some others, especially TV media, who have been uncompromising, during the pandemic. They still had shoots, and they still, kind of went through it all despite there being, government restrictions, so I think we still have a long way to go to kind of incorporating that culture where you need to be empathetic and you need to look after yourself. I mean, Sarah was talking about self-care, taking care of self, finding time for that. I think if that was mandated as part of, just like we have laws for work, for corporates, for organizations, even if that was mandated as a law to say, you need to have time for yourself and these need to be fixed working hours, maybe that could be a start, but that again is another conversation altogether. Yeah, but just any, Mrinalini, do you want to add anything to this aspect? Or yeah,
we're getting a bunch of questions from people across platforms because we are streaming on social media as well.
Yeah.
And an interesting question that we've got, which is actually addressed to all of you, is that if you had the chance to sit down and talk to your 21-year-old self, what would you tell him or her? Sumant?
Very interesting.
Not very much, actually, because I think the one thing I don't live with is regret. I think some fantastic things have happened, some terrible things have happened, and I think the fact that I stay excited, vulnerable, not brittle, stretchable, there's a lot of gratitude. So whenever I hear people being regretful over my 40s or my 20s, or I should have and I could have and I ought to have, it's like, no, you are exactly where you're meant to be. So to my 21-year-old, I would just say, my 21-year-old in certain ways was wiser, was able to manifest more than me now. I feel it's coming back. It's like full circle. So I wouldn't want to interfere. That's an odd thing and probably not what you wanted to hear, Mrinalini, but that's what I feel.
But it's interesting. You might tell your 21-year-old self that you've got an interesting journey ahead.
Because why not?
Yeah.
Irzan, what about you?
The first thing I would say is remind myself that beginning of 2020, run away to a nice island and stay there for 2 years. First thing I would do is that. And I was just thinking,
save up a ticket for that.
I was just thinking where I was in when I was 21. I was in architecture college and I was thoroughly enjoying myself because for the first time I was actually doing and studying something which I was relatively good at. Otherwise, throughout school, I was being trashed with biology, chemistry, physics, and maths, which just never entered my head. And I think I was very happy during that time. And even further on, I think the journey has been quite pleasant. And I think I've worked, not being modest, I've worked a lot towards it. So I think I'm quite happy. I would say just keep on going on. That's it. That's it. Nothing much.
I would agree with both of those. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, 21 was a great age. Like I don't remember being overtly worried about the future. I was at university. I was having a great time. I loved it. I think just keep on going.
Yep.
Lovely. Yeah.
Sarah, anything to add?
No, I think these guys covered it all.
I think what's really fascinating is that the lot of you, and as well as the panel before this one, one thing that's kind of resounded across speakers is that no one seems to have many regrets. Nobody wants to look back. And there's this sense of acceptance. And I don't know if that necessarily comes with, and perhaps it does. It comes with age, it comes with experience, it comes with the time that you are at in your life, personally, professionally, what you're doing and how satisfied you are with that. But it's really encouraging. And I think it's highly, highly encouraging, especially for the audience to know and see that, right, with all our speakers, because we've had people at various stages of their careers. And to talk about something similar, I think it's highly encouraging. Unfortunately, we have run short of time. These are conversations that can go on and on and on. We could have an entire conference based on these things, but we
an entire night.
Exactly.
It's an unmatched situation.
We can keep going on and on.
Sarah will go take a nap and come back.
My bedtime just about now.
But I have to say, you know what? I know that we pulled you out of your routines. Sarah, I know this is time for you to be with your family, your little girl. We saw her. We got a little glimpse of her on screen. Sumant, I know that you're hungry, and we saw you kind of take a couple of bites in between.
I'm hungry too. It looks tasty, man.
Tan has sacrificed his yoga
Yes.
for this. Sarah, you're sitting in the UK, right?
Yeah, this is working
So
day.
it's
This is
early
part of the
afternoon.
schedule, yeah.
Yeah. So we you know, and we're all here on a Friday evening, like I told all of you, and that's Supreet, who's from Godrej. I think what's very important to tell him right now, Supreet, is that you owe all of us a glass of wine for
yes.
our Friday evenings we have spent together. But on behalf, well, since it's difficult to ship a glass, maybe a bottle will do. But on behalf of Godrej, on behalf of Sneha and myself, we thank you all so much for taking out your time, for being here, for being honest and open and willing to share your journeys, your experiences, your vulnerabilities, and maybe deviating from your discipline a little bit to accommodate us. And I would just maybe, Sneha, if you could close for us and just, we've had a great session and we've had a great day and great 2 days as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone, to all our panelists today, and for all our panelists to join us on day one yesterday. Thank you so much. Thank you, Design Dekko, the Godrej Group, for having us do this, for giving us a platform to, host conversations like these, heart-to-hearts like these. Hoping that the next series will be in person.
Till then, we also want to tell you that we've had a big audience on social media across platforms. So thank you to them as well for tuning in. We apologize to a lot of people who sent in their questions, but we could not take them up. Hopefully next time. But also all these talks have been recorded and will be archived. So for all the people who were unable to attend our previous sessions and our previous conversations, you can find them on the Design Dekko YouTube channel. And they're also currently available on Facebook and Instagram, I believe. And they will be, but this is right now, it's the full live recording. They will be edited and archived properly on the Design Dekko website as well. But yeah, I think we've just had a great collection of 6 beautiful conversations. And we thank each one of you for being a part of it and for making it possible. Over to you, Supreet.
Thank you, Mrinalini, and thank you, Sneha. And thank you to all the speakers who have been sparing time here, and they actually engaged us through the day. I did not realize that we actually spent 8 hours talking with each other in the last 2 days. But these are memories, these are experiences which people will cherish in the coming time, and a lot of learnings for each one of us. So once again, thank you for sparing time.
Once, Supreet, the wine you were talking about, just to remind you, delivery charge for a bottle and a crate is the same, so I don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm with you there.
The next music we should have it in person.
Thank you.
We will have it.
No, it's been great meeting all of you, because I think
thank you.
Arzan, the Saras, Sneha, because otherwise, like you said, Arzan, we all live in our own little bubbles. So it's nice when bubbles overlap.
Of course.
A little glimpse of the other little floating world.
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you to all.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great weekend ahead, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
We are Godrej. Green and blue. And this is a story of the little things we do. It started with a little thing we made to protect you and your things. Over 100 years on, we're still doing the same, except it now has wings. Little things that'll take you places you can't get to on an airplane. And little things that circle the earth and tell our farmers when it'll rain. Little things that keep our animal friends hale and hearty. And little things that keep kids healthy and naughty. Little things that keep not just our homes, but even medicines and vaccines cool. And little things that rinse away dirt and allergens, so your little ones don't miss a day of school. Little things that make washing hands so much fun. And some that make your cars and homes smell like spring. Little things that keep diseases away. And some that make your hair shine and swing. Little things that help you make things. Big, small, and everything in between. And little things that help carry those things to places far and even unseen. Little things, or should we say little spaces, where you live, work and play, and little things you keep in those spaces, to sit, sleep, or just put things away. Locks, soaps, buildings and missiles. Well, there are quite a few. These are some of the little things we do.